Chapter 101 New Kami. A while before the androids went critical, on a remote jungle far away, a half-breed Xian was looking for the Temple of God. That should be the place. Long white pole going straight into the sky. Trunks mumbled excitedly after seeing the lower end of Korin Tower. After some thought he had decided to do this the old-fashioned way. Climb the entire thing. He was here to gain the post of God. If he doesn't even respect the rules, he doubts he will gain much except an empty lookout. Whoosh. Trunks kept flying and had by now approached the lookout, watching the empty residential areas which no doubt once held humans. Trunks sighed. These must be the tribes protecting the lookout. Maybe they left during the android massacre era. Now the tribe was all empty. Step. Falling down, Trunks touched the ground and walked up to the pole extending into the sky. Patting the pole to see what he was dealing with, Trunks quickly removed his jacket and tied it around his waist. And transformed into a Super Saiyan. No way. He might be willing to respect tradition, but that didn't stop him from speeding up the process a little. Alright, let's go. Wiggle. Climbing extremely quickly, Trunks began making his way up with a funny posture, but although his posture was funny, he was making rapid progress. Wiggle. Moving his hands and legs up and down, Trunks kept climbing with his cheeks a little red. But he held on, and it wasn't long that he could see a sphericalish structure up above. Clench. Gripping onto the ladder, Trunks flipped and landed on the Korin Tower. Now empty with no one in sight, Korin had come down a while ago to give senzu beans but was caught up in a blast, dying to the androids. Sorry. Praying to Korin's soul, Trunks didn't stay here and climbed to the second floor, where he found the path further upwards. A red pole extended upwards from the hole in the middle of Korin Tower. That's Mr. Goku's power pole. Trunks asked no one in particular. He had heard the stories and now was looking at it firsthand. Nevertheless, he jumped up, grabbed onto the pole and began making his way up once more. After a few more minutes he could see an artificial island floating up above. Gripping onto the ladder, he climbed along its edge. Flip. And finally flipped onto the lookout, a little breathless from the lack of air in the lookout. But it wasn't that which took his attention, it was the sudden and immediate dampening of his ki which did. My ki, what's happening? It feels as if the lookout is trying to contain it inside of my body. Weird, is this a part of being appointed a god? I don't think this is supposed to happen to anyone. Trunks didn't understand why the lookout was being the way it was, but Earth was weak and he was a Super Saiyan. Even with all its effort, the lookout wasn't able to keep his immense ki from leaking in one go. It'll take time for the lookout to change his ki to God ki, but Trunks didn't know that. He didn't even know that he was already appointed the god the second he completed both trials and was deemed worthy in heart. It's weird, I feel as if I have a connection with the lookout. I think I can call someone. Making a weird face, Trunks wondered if he was overthinking this, because nothing had happened yet. He was just standing here waiting for something to happen, but nothing did, so he figured he was alone and trusted his gut to try something. Ahem, is someone there? Please show yourself now. Trunks expected no response because he could sense ki. He knew there was no one there. Hello Kami. Oh god. That's why when a voice rang right behind him, Trunks almost jumped out of his skin. Turning around scared, Trunks came face to face with a happy Mr. Popo, and slowly calmed his beating heart. You must be Mr. Popo. I am Trunks, sorry for intruding. It's okay, you are now Kami, this is your lookout. Mr. Popo softly calmed down Trunks and said his part, which caused Trunks to open his mouth in wonder. That's it? I am Kami just like that. Yes, just like that? Mr. Popo spoke again, without much resistance, only a slight feeling of sadness from remembering the old Kami. But so was his nature as the guide of Earth's Kami. One goes another comes, but he remains constant, guiding every Kami in the right direction, and from the looks of it, this new Kami needed a lot of guidance. Kami, please calm yourself. I will tell you about your role shortly, but before that, would you like to see what Raditz is up to? He is currently holding Android 18, who's about to blow up. You can observe them from the edge if you would like. Trunks almost yelled out loud and rushed towards the edge of the lookout. There his eyes automatically crossed the distance and found Raditz just in time. Boom! For the explosion to shake the skies. Shit, I must go. Kami, please only interfere when you absolutely need to. Mr. Popo advised softly. Just like the Supreme Kais, Kamis weren't supposed to interfere willy-nilly with mortals' business. It was a Kami's duty to guide the overall Earth instead of meddling with the natural flow of life. Trunks was appalled and wanted to argue, but Popo softly calmed him down again. The new Kami had much to learn. Raditz is fine, please look again. You must learn restraint, Kami. Only in this way will you be able to bring the Earth back to working order sooner. Trunks, although not very happy with such restrictions placed upon him, did look again, and found Raditz was fine with only a few scuffs. It was Android 18 who he was holding who was pretty badly injured. But she was still breathing, meaning that Raditz had managed to disperse the blast well enough. Sighing with relief, Trunks once again focused his attention on Mr. Popo. He seems to have a lot to learn about his new responsibilities. Mr. Popo, I hope you won't tell me to do nothing at all as Kami. No Kami who is good can truly remain neutral, so some overall help is definitely possible. You have to judge it yourself, Kami. With that, Mr. Popo began to guide Trunks as the new Kami, and Earth was slowly starting to receive vital energy. Recovery was on its way just from Trunks being on the god's seat. And within due time, the Earth will feed back to its Kami, forming a loop which will eventually lead to the birth of a new Super Saiyan god. Chapter 102. 18. Time passed quickly after Trunks became Earth's Kami. During this time Raditz and his messengers went ahead and met every single survivor group on planet Earth. Even some brave soul survivors were no exceptions and were visited in person. Anyone alive was given the choice to return to the newly forming society, a society of martial arts and ki. A large amount had returned and a new king was chosen by the surviving group. Well, it was more appropriate to call the ruler the queen because the king was going away for a long time. I can't be Queen Earth, it's not what I am good at, exclaimed Bulma, the newly appointed queen. She was but a proxy of Raditz in public eye, but with Raditz no longer around, she might as well be the sole ruler. And although Bulma didn't like the work pushed upon her, Raditz didn't budge on the issue. It's either her or Satan, and no way in hell is he giving the position to Satan. Trunks is the god of Earth, you will manage being the ruler. And I can't trust anyone else in this position, only you won't be abusing your powers too much. Raditz swiftly retracted that last statement in his heart after remembering this was the same girl who went on a journey to find the wish-granting dragon, just so she can have a boyfriend. And it's not like she got a whole lot better over the years either. Tightness of her ass was also within the category of her wishes in Super. Not that Raditz was complaining about that last part, that's a fine wish if he had ever seen one. Hey, what's with the unsure-sounding words? Huh? Hey, don't look the other way. Looking the other way, Raditz ignored Bulma and gazed at the calendar. Today was the day he would have to leave. Bulma also somehow became quiet after seeing where his eyes focused on. It's time? I wish this would have lasted longer, said Bulma before sitting beside Raditz. Although they spent a lot of time together, he didn't belong here after all. Raditz has to leave now. Simply holding Bulma's shoulder, he sat in silence, watching the setting sunset. After a sleepless night, Raditz silently left the next morning, Bulma watching his leaving back from her room with a longing look. Whoosh! Flying through the air, Raditz did rounds all over the earth one last time, spending much of the quality time with animals he had promised to come back to. But his forest would have to live without its king from now on. Raditz even visited 16 and 17, those two were helping rebuild Earth from behind the scenes, said his goodbyes to them and finally landed before his waterfall home. This is the right place, a miracle happening in a place where no one can see. Don't you agree? Raditz asked the empty surroundings, and received silence as a reply. But he didn't mind. Shrugging his shoulders, Raditz turned towards a dense tree foliage and said lightly, "You have been following behind me all this time, hiding out of my sensing range, but you aren't as sneaky as you think you are. I am about to leave now, so if you have something to say, say it." 18. The leaves shook and 18 walked out with a look that seemed cold but was clearly hiding the shame of getting caught. Not dwelling on her stalking note, investigating being leaked, 18 stopped a bit away from Raditz and put her hair behind her ear. Then silence was upon the duo. Both weren't people who liked to talk much, so nothing was being said and only a staring contest was held. A contest which 18 lost with a huff. Again pushing her blonde hair behind her ears, she finally asked Raditz, "Can I come with you?" Taken aback, Raditz pondered on her question. He had expected a questioning sessions on why he saved her. It was something that had confused her even in original when Krillin used his wish for her. He had also expected a rematch request or a sneak attack from her. After all, she was always tailing behind him since the day of the explosion, always hiding herself to not be seen. "Come with me? Do you even know where I am going?" "No?" "Intriguing, you have piqued my interest a little. Tell me your reasons." Looking at Raditz for a while without any response, 18 turned her head with a click of her tongue, and said with a slight annoyance in her tone, "I don't have one, I just want to go somewhere that isn't here." Folding his hands, Raditz looked at her funny and shook his head. "Those clumsy lies aren't going to work on me. If you insist on not speaking out, you can't be let loose. You'll have to follow me around. I'll keep you under close watch. Deal." 18's excited voice stopped Raditz in his tracks. She also caught herself in the middle of it and turned the other way with slight blush on her cheeks. That was too hasty and shameful to someone like her, but she wasn't tailing Raditz for so long without a purpose. She had seen all she wanted to see and she herself wanted to stay, being under watch or not. But she felt the need to clarify herself a bit, lest her image be ruined in his eyes. "Don't look at me like that. I don't know where you are going, but you have been doing things like you won't be staying here any longer. Bulma didn't follow you either, I checked, so you are obviously alone. With me around you won't be. I can be useful, I am an android." Raditz laughed loudly after hearing her reasons. She doesn't even know he's from the past. She even mistook Bulma staying here as her not willing to follow him. "That's hilarious, 18. You are going to be in for a nasty surprise if you think I am all alone and you'll be my sole company or something." Huffing lightly, 18 said, "Keep telling yourself that. You aren't fooling anyone. But the fact is no one has followed you." Holding his forehead, Raditz gave up trying to convince her. If she wanted to be that overconfident, that's on her. Waving at her, Raditz went inside his cave house. "Come with me then." Watching Raditz go inside a cave with a makeshift bed, 18 looked silently, but then huffed and went inside anyway, pretending to be nonchalant. Splash! Walking below the waterfall, 18 felt her clothes become wet, but she figured that won't be a problem for long. So when she saw Raditz completely ignoring everything in the cave after cleaning it once, and taking out a capsule while constantly fiddling with it, she couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing? Did you come here just to play with that thing?" Looking at the wet 18, Raditz asked with confusion, "What am I doing? What are you doing?" Standing all wet like that, we are going to travel, aren't we? I am preparing our vehicle. Twitching her eyes, 18 asked with a tinge of annoyance in her voice. Traveling, from inside a cave. Nodding his head, Raditz completely ignored her annoyance and explained. I told you before, this miracle will happen in a place no one can see. Poof. The capsule dropped by Raditz poofed loudly, and the time machine inside it popped into existence, while 18 looked at it weirdly. How are you going to get that out of the cave? Gesturing with his hands, Raditz called 18 towards him. I don't need to, and come here, touch this panel. Opening the time machine, Raditz showed 18 a panel which 18 put her hand on after a few seconds. Whoom. And quickly backed away with fear, because as soon as she touched the panel everything became bigger. No, it's not the surroundings which got bigger, I got smaller. Looking up from the ground, which now seemed like a massive rocky plain, 18 yelled loudly. What are you doing, Raditz? Smiling at the finger-sized 18, Raditz bent down and picked her up in his palm. With a look that meant shut up for a second, which 18 begrudgingly obliged, Raditz spoke while jumping inside the time machine. This is something Bulma made during her childhood, the shrinking device. It's reversible, but you need to use it if you want to fit inside the machine, so hold tight, we are going for a ride. 18 twitched her eyes before grabbing onto Raditz's hair. She figured after touching it that the top of his mane was most secure and flew to that spot and settled, which Raditz had to try hard and not swat her away from. You could just sit on the seat, you don't have to climb on my hair. 18 didn't say anything after that, pretending that she knew that and decided to do this anyway. So Raditz didn't burst her bubble and let it go, it'll be a short journey anyway. When he returns, it would be time for the androids to arrive in the past, and he was looking forward to Android Jero. That brain held so much knowledge that he wanted for himself. Swish. With a slight hum, the time machine vanished from the cave, and reappeared at the same spot once more, but this time, it was the past. I am back, thought Raditz with narrowed eyes. He was sensing a lot of interesting auras on Earth too. Many things have changed while he was away, it seems. A/N. Advanced chapters ahead on Patreon. Chapter 103 Super Saiyan Vegeta. Poof. Keeping the time machine back into a capsule, Raditz leisurely walked out of the cave with 18 in tow. Looking around her, 18 found it exactly the same as before their travel and asked with visible confusion. What's going on? Weren't we going to travel? Taking in a deep breath, Raditz enjoyed the air of the past and began floating upwards without answering 18. 18 seeing that followed along as well. After choosing a direction, Raditz held on to 18 and put 2 fingers on his forehead, before finally answering her question. We have traveled. Traveled back to the past, before you and your brother messed everything up. What? Dash. Swish. Teleporting to an island where a hut with the name Kame House was located, Raditz left the confused 18's shoulder, and called out to the sleeping Master Rashi. Master, I am back, help me train, will ya? Shaken awake, Rashi opened his eyes and the first thing he saw was Raditz, then the next thing he saw was 18. Oh, and was pumped full of energy almost instantly, but before the master could try his chances on 18, Raditz saved him the trouble. Oh, and the one besides me is 18, one of the killer androids. Rashi slumped back into his chair and decided to let Raditz handle this mess. No way he's messing with one of the killer androids Raditz seems to be keeping an eye on. I see, nice to meet you 18, so, Raditz, what kind of training do you want? Scratching his hair, Raditz said in a helpless tone. I had to fight against 3 androids at once, each one stronger than the other. I have powered up too much in a short time, although I kept myself from losing control of my strength, my balance is completely out of whack. Raditz demonstrated what he meant by turning on Ultra Instinct, which instead of its usual solid gray-eyed look, was flashing on and off. Rashi understood what Raditz meant after that show. This was a lack of proper control of his quickly boosted strength. Don't increase your raw power anymore, focus on controlling what you have. It's good you didn't power up beyond what you could handle. If you did that, you wouldn't be able to use Ultra Instinct at all. Agreeing to Rashi with a smile, Raditz decided to make a training plan with Rashi. Regaining control over his Ultra Instinct wasn't that hard, he only needed to fully master his current strength while balancing his spirit with his body. Although doing this won't power him up, it'll definitely power him up, as in with the same amount of power he'll hit harder than he would right now. Between their talks, Raditz and Rashi completely ignored 18 on the side, who got the clue and went ahead and settled on the stairs of Kame House. While the master and disciple decided on what to train, she was coming to terms with the fact that this was the past. So I haven't done what I am being programmed to do yet, thought 18. She was quite confused and had no idea how time travel actually worked. She was an android, not a scientist. So she figured, if this was a normal past, there has to be some kind of past version of her and her brother here too, right? Or is it present version now? My head hurts, thought 18 while massaging her head. Raditz and Rashi by now had made a training plan that Raditz needed to follow through. But although a plan was made, now wasn't the time to do any of that, because Raditz had arrived at a very good time. After all, he had timed his stay so equal amount of time passed in both timelines. The moment he chose to arrive was around the time when androids has first shown up in the future. Master, that sounds about right for further training, but I might need to leave now. Oh, is it time already? Rashi asked without expecting an answer, because it was obvious that was the case, or Raditz wouldn't postpone his training and only come to him for a quick plan. Raditz nodded to Rashi's question and asked 18 one of his own. 18, we came back at a very special time, today's the day you both are meant to attack. You coming with me? I'll leave you to you in that case. Looking up from her sitting position, 18 pursed her lips and decided to take on the offer. She might as well let her past self have a good time, if even her past self has to face Raditz, she can already imagine the hopelessness firsthand. I am coming with you. Great. With a smile Raditz folded his hands and laughed happily. When 18 asked what he was laughing at, Raditz explained with a curious smile. I wonder what differences there would be from the future you and I now know. This is a whole another timeline with another set of events loosely connected with each other. For all we know there will be more androids to deal with, we'll just have to wait and see. This was a new timeline? 18 thought with her head hurting even more, so then was it her past or not? This was all too confusing for 18 so she decided to ask Raditz all about it later. Alright, grab onto me, the team has already gathered in one place. They must have found something. Getting up from the stairs, 18 walked up to Raditz and kept her hand on his shoulder, then Raditz put 2 fingers on his forehead. Swish. And teleported right beside Gaku, who looked at Raditz with a confused look before smiling widely. Brother, you are back. Gaku's exclamation also altered everyone, and their tense nerves relaxed after seeing it was one of their own. The Z fighters all nodded to Raditz. They were currently standing on a barren mountain, making plans for the upcoming raid against the androids. Everyone was ready to face off against the threat that should be their end. Everyone very was serious about this, everyone except Vegeta. After seeing Raditz his whole agenda instantly shifted. Raditz, fight me, now. Vegeta instantly challenged Raditz, and immediately transformed into a Super Saiyan upon seeing him arrive. Looking at Vegeta's haughty attitude which screamed I am a super elite, Raditz twitched his eyes. Now was not the time for this. The Z fighters had obviously found clues of android activity. Yet the guy was hell-bent on making his pride be known to all. Well, so be it. If he thinks he's going to be haughty regardless of time, he's got another thing coming. So Raditz looked at the arm Vegeta pointed at him with, and then looked at 18 besides him. 18, break that arm. Vegeta frowned at Raditz's words and looked at the girl standing besides him, who was currently eyeing him with her icy eyes. Guys, I don't think this is the time to fight amongst each other. Yamcha tried to reason with Vegeta's unreasonable behavior and Raditz's flaring anger because of that behavior. But Vegeta snorted at Yamcha and glared at him, prompting him to shut up. Vegeta knew full well they gathered here because they found some suspicious android activity in a city, but that was the least of Vegeta's concerns when Raditz was around. Is that it? I have to go through her to get to you. I can destroy her just by looking at her hard enough. Raditz, don't shame me by throwing weaklings at me, fight me like a king. The Z fighters standing around the empty clearing were all kinds of frustrated right now. There was android activity going on as they speak and Vegeta had to bring up his pride smack dab in the middle of it all. But Raditz wasn't going to back down even when he saw Krillin's pleading looks. This wasn't his place to back down. Him backing down now would be equal to him giving way to Vegeta. And no way was he bowing down to this prideful buffon, inflating his ego even more. Humiliating you. Raditz smirked at Vegeta with his hands folded, then said with his eyes narrowed. I have no interest in humiliating you, Vegeta. But before challenging me, you have to go through my underlings. I would have let Nappa fight you but she's new. This will be her training. Get past her then we'll talk. And 18, make it quick. I can sense a large-scale disturbance in natural energy. Something is happening. Putting her hands on her waist 18 looked at Vegeta, smirked and walked out towards a deserted rock formation. Vegeta gave a bloodthirsty smirk as well and walked up to the same clearing, taking his place before 18. 18, is it? Make your move, I'll show you what a Super Saiyan is all about. Although Vegeta's behavior was almost equivalent to shooting everyone in the foot, the Z fighters knew this but they can't stop this. So they gathered and watched the two opponents get ready. Krillin meanwhile was looking at 18 in a distracted way, then asked Raditz nervously. Raditz, is she going to be okay? Vegeta somehow become a Super Saiyan. He's almost as strong as Goku right now. Raditz looked at Krillin with a funny smile, then shook his head and refused to comment. Why ruin the suspense? Just watch. So everyone seriously watched the two, waiting for the clash to begin. They also had some expectations of this fight. If Raditz had this much confidence in the new girl, she had to have some substance. It was intriguing to them, because they couldn't sense her at all. A new warrior was amongst them. They wanted to see how she measured up. Chapter 104 Horrible Defeat. Vegeta looked at his opponent with a toying attitude. After all his efforts he was finally a Super Saiyan. Now there wasn't a thing that can threaten him anymore. 18 also looked at Vegeta with one arm on her waist, then as if on cue, both vanished at the same time. Bang! And Vegeta flew back faster than he had approached, with his arm visibly bent in the wrong places. Boom! After crashing into the mountain, Vegeta grabbed onto his left arm and collapsed onto the ground, screaming involuntarily from the sudden pain of the shattered bone. Aik! Vegeta's screams went to deaf ears for 18, who landed before Vegeta and looked at him with an icy look. Did that hurt? Sorry, had to go for the arm, boss's orders. But Vegeta could sense no apology in her voice at all. All he could sense was pure mocking and that really irritated him to no end. He didn't even see her coming. How could that be? Crack! Another kick to his chin, which he again missed because of 18's speed, sent Vegeta's body tumbling back down. Boom! Collapsing into the ground, knocked out cold from his brain being shaken inside his head. Watching Vegeta bite the dust so quickly had the Z fighters' sweat glands work hard. Piccolo looked at 18 as if he saw some kind of monster. With his teeth clenched, Piccolo questioned Raditz with suspicion and fear in his voice. Who is that Raditz? Nappa also asked Raditz while looking completely shaken. I have never seen her around you, King. Who is this? Taking out a Super Saiyan in 2 attacks. Goku, Gohan and the rest of the Z fighters remained shaken, but the shock they felt was no less. That's a Super Saiyan. Many of them don't even measure up to a quarter of that power, and this girl comes around breaking Vegeta's arm first try like it was the easiest thing to do. Raditz, hearing all the questions directed at him, looked calm, then raised his hand and telekinetically pulled Vegeta towards him. Thump. Dropping him onto the ground, Raditz gestured at 18 to come back, and then told the Z fighters the secret. She's one of the killer androids from the future. She straightened up, so I brought her back as a subordinate. Piccolo was almost out of breath from the implications of this thing. That girl was one of the androids they have to fight. And she took down Super Vegeta with 2 strikes. No way, can we even win this thing? Jitsu's exclamation was in the heart of every Z fighter, almost everyone, the Saiyans included. After all, this was an android which almost one-shot a Super Saiyan. Seeing the morale go down the drain, Raditz figured he should do something about it. He doesn't want the Z fighters to go in thinking it's impossible. Especially if the human Z fighters start acting like Yamcha and give up during the android arc, that would be really bad. It's not that simple. If Vegeta wasn't trying to toy with his opponent and humiliate 18, he wouldn't have gone down so easily. On top of that, 18 went all out from the get-go. Her sole aim was to break his arm before taking him out. It's no surprise Vegeta went down this easy. Krillin scratched his head and was about to say something, but before he could do so, something happened. Boom! All the Z fighters' heads snapped towards the city, in which a giant explosion just took place, forming a glowing hemisphere of energy. What happened? Nappa exclaimed, and the Z fighters knew that Vegeta had wasted too much of their time. Something big had happened in the city due to the androids. Damn it, we have to go quickly. Piccolo yelled with anger and irritation. They were late. In this drastic situation, before Raditz could say anything, Goku took the lead and turned into a Super Saiyan. Krillin, wake Vegeta up and give him a senzu bean. Krillin quickly nodded, a fearful look still on his face due to the magnitude of that blast. Raditz also decided to leave 18 here, lest Vegeta hurts Krillin in his unfounded rage. 18, stay here with Krillin, come back when Vegeta is stabilized. Nodding her head, 18 walked up to the blushing Krillin, and ignoring that, Goku exclaimed before blasting off. Let's go. Whoosh. All the Z fighters flew towards the blast area full speed, with multiple white aura streaking across the skies. The Z fighters finally landed on ground zero. Who is that? Where they found a large man standing on the scorched earth, looking down on the ground with a blank look on his face. That's 16. Raditz answered while looking at 16, then his eyes searched around the place and found what looked to be remains of a destroyed lab. So he set up lab in a city this time around? What gives? Something must have changed. Even 16 is activated ahead of time. Thump. When the Z fighters were measuring 16 up, one of the broken buildings slid down and crashed into the ground, and a humanoid climbed out of the rubble. You almost took me with the lab, 16. Tien looked at the figure climbing out of the rubble and said with a light coat of sweat shining on his forehead. Another android. But he didn't need an answer. That was obvious. Those two definitely knew each other as well. 16, who was looking down until now, finally raised his head after hearing his companion's words, and replied without emotions. That was the best course of action. 19. The android named 19 clenched his teeth at 16's careless words. He was almost caught up in the blast, and 16 doesn't even care. But android 19 was programmed to obey Jero, who told him to follow 16, so he begrudgingly went and stood with him. Watching all that happen, Raditz silently took in everything while quickly analyzing the events. It's not Jero, it's android 16 and 19, and this was Jero's lab they just destroyed. What are they trying to hide? If android 16 thinks it's the best course of action, it definitely was the best course of action. So Raditz had to know, if things have changed this much, and Jero had vanished as well, what exactly changed? But how do I figure this out? They aren't going to just tell me, and the lab is gone too. No, it might not be all gone. The lab should have a basement. That was where Cell's embryo was in the original. Maybe that part survived the explosion. If so, searching through the possible surviving lab was top priority. Without knowing what Jero was doing, they would be always in the dark. So while their group was confronting the two androids, Raditz proposed his plan. Listen, there's a problem. What they just destroyed was Jero's lab, but some part might have survived. Only one of them is in the future. This 19 guy is new, and 17 and 18 are nowhere to be seen, much less Jero. Can you guys handle these guys while I check what's going on? Otherwise we would have no idea what we are dealing with here. Raditz's idea itself wasn't bad, but it was going to be hard dealing with these two without Raditz. At least they had Goku, Gohan and Ultimate Nappa. Maybe even Vegeta and 18 could be thrown into the mix if they don't keep wasting time fighting amongst each other, like they were doing right now. How long will it take? Piccolo asked while dropping his weighted clothes on the ground. This place was almost a desolate ground after the recent blast, but it was still in the middle of the city, not the best place to fight in. Understanding Piccolo's unsaid concerns, Raditz's eyes began glowing yellow. I'll try to be as quick as I can. You guys take them out of here. I'll go straight for the lab. After the plan was set, every Z fighter powered up and got ready to move. Goku and Gohan went Super Saiyan while Nappa went Ultimate. 16 and 19, although unable to hear the plan from far away, did understand they were about to face a confrontation, so they got ready too. What they weren't ready for was Raditz vanishing into thin air with 2 fingers pointed at his forehead. This caught 16 off guard. One of his top priority was gone, but before they could take a decision, Super Saiyan Goku rushed towards him. Bang! And thus the confrontation began, but what was supposed to be showing the results of the Z fighters' training was instead a one-sided massacre. Yamcha! The human Z fighters exclaimed and ganged up on Android 19, who instantly dispatched Yamcha in one attack. Damn it! Meanwhile, Gohan, Nappa and Piccolo attacked 16, who had just beaten Goku to the ground, knocking him out of Super Saiyan in one quick strike. They weren't prepared to deal with this amount of power at all. This was a fight way out of their league at this point in time. 16 was someone capable of trapping Perfect Cell. A non-full power Super Saiyan Goku and a similarly powered Nappa were disgustingly outmatched against someone like that, and while getting their teeth kicked in, they understood this point plenty clearly. Chapter 105 Goku vs 16. With a swift kick, 16 knocked Goku out of his Super Saiyan state. 16's entire purpose was to kill Goku, so he didn't hold back at all during this attack. Bang! And it showed, as Goku collapsed onto the ground in a heap. 16 would have gone for the kill if not for Gohan, Piccolo and Nappa coming to the rescue. Meanwhile, Goku himself was panting on the ground, trying to catch his breath after the last attack. Although Goku still forgot to take his medication not being something he was used to, this time around it wasn't Shishi was who in charge of Goku, it was Gohan. The caring boy made sure his dad properly got the medicine on time, letting Goku escape his sad fate. But even medicine takes time to fully heal someone, so although Goku didn't have a heart disease anymore, he wasn't at his 100% either. Ha, that stings. Goku laughed, forcefully trying to pick himself off the ground. He tremblingly put his hands on the ground and pushed hard, slowly raising himself up. Huff. Breathing a bit laboriously, Goku once again focused. Whoosh. And turned into a Super Saiyan, but this time around he'll be careful not get knocked out of his transformation. Going in and out of Super Saiyan takes a load on his stamina. Hey, if transforming back into a Super Saiyan makes me tired, what if I stay just as a Super Saiyan all the time? I'll have to transform only once like that. That ought to work. As soon as Goku found himself in some real trouble, his creative mind quickly found a solution to his problems and invented a new way to power. The way of full power Super Saiyan. After countless trial and error, Goku couldn't push past Super Saiyan just yet, even when he was told to do so by Raditz. But now he understood, it wasn't a problem of the path itself, it was a problem of him not having full control of his Super Saiyan form. If he gains that, there would be no problem pushing past Super Saiyan. With that in mind, Goku rushed back in towards 16. Bang! Who countered Goku swiftly, but Goku also cleanly dodged the left hook, and charged up a Kamehameha while panting. Kamehameha! Whoosh! The energy wave rushed towards 16, who crossed his hands and had to take the blast head-on. Boom! In the cover of the explosion, Gohan, Nappa and Piccolo stumbled back to Goku, standing beside him. Wiping the blood flowing down his lips, Piccolo understood he was completely outmatched against 16. He wasn't even in the same league as a Super Saiyan, much less 16. What is that guy doing? Why is he still fighting? No 18. Piccolo growled. Vegeta's ki was constantly fluctuating. That meant he was fighting against someone they couldn't sense, which could only be 18. Piccolo didn't want to meddle in this fight against 16, being so outmatched, but if he doesn't do this, only 3 people can't possibly hurt 16, so he had to bite the bullet and carry on. Damn it, if only Vegeta did what he was supposed to do. Nappa, can you engage him for a while? Piccolo asked while quickly making new plans. Their idea to take the fight outside was a total bust. They were barely able to protect themselves. This ruin will have to do as a battlefield. Nappa was startled with the sudden question but replied pretty quickly. He knew how important it was to not dilly-dally in a battlefield. Yeah, I can hold him down for a while. After hearing Nappa's positive response, Piccolo put 2 of his fingers on his forehead and began charging an attack. Then said with narrowed eyes, "Buy me some time, Goku, Gohan, charge up your attacks as well. Use them as a distraction if you can, as long as special beam cannon hits, it'll take a chunk off him." Goku and Gohan considered the feasibility of this plan, and after understanding this was possible, they began to take their Kamehameha poses. Nappa took this as his cue and rushed towards 16. He was the strongest one amongst them, although Kakarot could fight him just fine using his battle instincts, but pure power-wise Nappa trumped over everyone except Raditz. So he understood that engaging 16 alone even for a little while was something only he could do, especially now that Kakarot was sick. "Alright big guy, it's only you and me." Landing before 16, Nappa punched his fist onto his palm, giving a battle smirk to 16. He walked up to the silent android. Soon they stood face to face, their massive bodies trying to overpower each other. "Haha, you really are a big guy, aren't you? It's not always I get to beat them this large." Nappa smirked before swiftly punching 16 in the face, which 16 dodged with a simple head tilt. Nappa's veins popped from the failure and he quickly began attacking 16 with all his might. Ha. Constantly trying to hit 16, Nappa chained his punches, kicks, ki blasts, even headbutts, but nothing connected. The large android kept on looking at him with an icy look, before he finally spoke in a plain voice. I have seen through your attack pattern, you can no longer hurt me. Stopping mid-attack, Nappa jumped back from the sudden statement, but gritted his teeth and smirked. Yeah, we'll see about that. Take this. Bang. Nappa's eyes almost popped out of his skull, the sudden knee to the stomach was out of nowhere, he didn't even see this one coming. As if it came from his blind spot? Damn it, he really saw through my attacks. Nappa wanted to get up, he still had to buy time, but he wasn't able to pick himself off the ground. Struggling on his knees he could only watch 16 walk past him, and flash towards the trio. Gohan, stay back. But 16 wasn't trying to attack any random fighter, what he was up against was Goku. This was a man whose battle IQ was off the charts. Goku's words might have seemed random but this was his experience speaking. He had noticed how 16 looks at him, this android was focused on killing him alone. So if he engages 16, 16 would almost certainly not care about anything else, even if that thing is Piccolo charging a special beam cannon at his face. Goku didn't have any knowledge about 16's coding, or him being the goal of extermination, but what he did have was his mind and his incredible sense of battle. With that alone Goku found and used a loophole in 16's coding, him focusing solely on Goku would be his downfall. Swish. With 2 fingers on his forehead, Goku teleported behind 16, his charged up Kamehameha in one hand, which he quickly connected with the shocked 16's head. Boom. Causing a massive blast which threw Goku off from its sheer intensity, but spinning in the air a few times, Goku landed on this feat just fine. Huff. Huff. After this stunt he was panting much more than before, this was a risky behavior on his part, if 16 anticipated Goku teleporting, he could have hurt Goku a lot. But Goku's plan worked, quickly looking towards his son and Piccolo, Goku yelled, do it. Taking this as their chance, Gohan rushed towards the dust cloud covering 16, blowing it away with his arrival, and Piccolo aimed his special beam cannon. Mr. Piccolo. Gohan didn't give the stumbling 16 any chance and flashed behind him, after calling out to Piccolo, Gohan fired his Kamehameha right behind 16's back. Ha! Which pushed him uncontrollably towards Piccolo, who looked at 16 with a successful smile before releasing his attack. Zoom. See crack. What? The attack which was aimed at 16's head did in fact connect, but sadly, in the nick of time 16 managed to tilt his head at 180 degrees. With this sudden inhuman set of movements, he dodged the attack that should have been certain death. Although it did take a chunk off his head, the crashed body of 16 managed to pick himself off the ground. This monster. Piccolo spat. They only had one shot at this, they weren't going to catch 16 off guard again. Their plan was perfect, but they didn't take into account 16 being an artificial human. 16 wasn't stopped by the way a human body moved, neither will he stop with half of his head missing. They had a lack of knowledge about their opponent. Son Goku, your attack patterns will no longer work. And now they will pay for this lack of information. 16 had scanned and understood how instant transmission worked. Goku can no longer catch him off guard. Your chances of winning are less than 10%. Son Goku, I am made to kill you alone, everyone else doesn't have to risk dying together. 16 advised the rest of the Z fighters. This really pissed off 19 but he was busy fighting Krillin and Tien, so he couldn't get a word in. But a heavy silence was still spread on the battlefield, a silence which 16 understood was because no one wanted to leave Goku alone. This made him contemplate for a while, but he soon made a decision, if they didn't want to leave, he'll finish them off as they come, until Goku was finally dead. Chapter 106 Clues Boom. Raditz could sense the fight going on top of his head, in fact he could even hear the fight. They weren't skimping on ki blasts, that's for sure. But even if he felt Yamcha's and Chitsu's ki go dim, he wasn't able to do much right now, his work was much more important than a momentary save. Because currently he was in the basement of the lab blown up by 16, it was here that he found a culture tank, an empty culture tank. Don't tell me, that's Cell's culture tank. Raditz frowned while looking at the empty tank, this was eerily similar to the tank where Cell's embryo was supposed to be in. But this was a different lab in a different place from original, unless Jero moved Cell's embryo for whatever reason, this shouldn't be Cell's tank. The electronics are still active, it's a separate power source from the lab above. Looking at the glowing computer, Raditz decided to check for himself what this was all about. Walking up to it, he tried to open it up. Error. But received an immediate error message, this required a password he didn't have. Not letting that bother him, Raditz pulled out a satellite phone and connected it to the computer's port. Beep. The satellite phone beeped and soon Bulma was on the line. What's going on? Asked Bulma while checking what Raditz was transferring through the cell phone. Raditz explained to her in brief, although he didn't meet her after returning. He knew Master Roshi must have told her that he was back, so he didn't comment on it right now. Currently more important things were going on. This is Jero's computer, see if you can crack it, try to find out what happened in this lab. Something is wrong here, an empty culture tank, 2 androids are missing, Jero himself is gone, I need to know what's going on. Bulma nodded with an understanding look and then quickly began decoding the computer. While Bulma worked her magic, Raditz set the phone down and began physically exploring the lab. Soon he found some traces, a tattered reddish handkerchief was lying in a corner, seeing that Raditz narrowed his eyes. That's 17's concluded Raditz as he picked it up. This was what 17 wore on his neck all the time. Raditz was familiar with the thing. After all, he fought against the guy for 3 days straight and spent a long time in the future. 17 was around a lot. He can't mistake this. This was 17's. What would have caused him to drop his favorite scarf? Raditz frowned as he stored the scarf in a capsule. Who knows, maybe he might find some DNA evidence from it, letting him know what transpired here. After keeping the clue secure, Raditz kept walking around, occasionally feeling some key signatures going up and down above him. Although he couldn't do much about that, but his repeated exploration did manage to give him one more clue. What is this? In a corner of the lab, there was a patch of green slime. From the dark patches, most of it was evaporated, but a little bit remained. Bending down, Raditz reached for the slime with his finger. Boom. But almost lost balance due to the lab shaking, as if its foundations were going to crumble. TCH, still fighting on top of the lab, they aren't able to pull the androids away from here. Raditz clicked his tongue. The lab's electricity was flickering. This was why he wanted the fight to happen away from here, but it seems that isn't possible anymore. After the lab finally stopped shaking, Raditz reached for the slime again. Stretch. And felt it with his fingers. This was a green slime which was giving Raditz a feeling of amniotic fluid, just green in color. This coupled with Cell's embryo missing, has already painted a picture for Raditz. Cell is matured. But how? It should still take a long time for this to happen. Not only that, Cell should be hunting for humans to absorb for a while too, before he attacks the androids for absorption. Vaporizing the fluid stuck to his fingers, Raditz thought quietly. Beep. Raditz, I found it. And after some time of putting clues together, Bulma finally called out from her end. Walking up to the phone, Raditz picked it up. What's the matter? What happened here? Bulma sorted through the data and started speaking. There are some logs. It's about how a creature codenamed Cell's maturation time has shortened due to pre-available mature genes. Raditz narrowed his eyes. Pre-available genes of a mature cell? Isn't it? I found a footage. It's from a city area. Jero seems to have some means to collect data from the entire world. Even many of our group's activities are in recordings. I'll go through them later. But I checked the recording associated with this creature. Remember that android from the future you killed a while ago? It's that guy's recording. Bulma became quiet for a while, before speaking again, having checked something. Raditz, you won't believe it. Jero got his hands on a DNA sample of future Cell, and he added it to the current larvae. Instead of taking his time maturing, the larvae matured immediately, just from some of his future cells that contained his imperfect form's data. Although this was shocking to Bulma, this wasn't new information to Raditz. He knew Cell can do stuff like this. Every cell of his contains information of any stages he had achieved. This was why he was able to jump from semi-perfect to super-perfect after being reduced to one cell. This shouldn't have been possible, as Android 18 was not absorbed by him anymore, but he did it anyway because his cells remembered the time he had absorbed Android 18. Reverting from imperfect to his larvae stage, changing from semi-perfect to super-perfect, Cell seems to have the Frieza race's transformation abilities hard-coded inside of him. After understanding everything Bulma said, Raditz put it all together in order and pondered. So Jero found future Cell's DNA, made use of the information stored about his imperfect form, and injected it into larvae Cell. Is that why Jero's not here anymore? But what about the androids? Do you see any file named 17 and 18? Bulma had a lot of information to comb through, so she didn't get everything in one go, but after being told by Raditz she started searching for this in particular, and soon found some results. Exclaiming with shock, Bulma told Raditz what she found. There's a clip. This creature, Cell, he opened 2 life support machines, and absorbed 2 people using his tail. A girl and a boy. The girl was absorbed before she woke up, but the boy attempted to put up a fight. But Cell changed after absorbing the girl. He looks different now. The boy was absorbed too. Wait, he's changing again. Bulma watched the clip and commented in real time as Raditz was starting to have a headache. Oh god, future Cell accelerated Jero's progress too much, so much so that he didn't even activate the uncontrollable 17 and 18 and directly let Cell absorb them. Cell's perfect Cell now, isn't he? Damn it, Jero is a crazy bastard. Does he really think Cell will obey him? He's simply dooming the Earth. Cell has changed, but there's an old man here too. Wait, I remember that face. That's Jero? But his brain is in a transparent skull. I think he's an android. Raditz. Yeah, he's totally an android, and he took Cell with him. The footage cuts after a while. An explosion happened somewhere. Rubbing his eyebrows, Raditz wondered what he should do now. If Cell was around, he can go fight him immediately, but he wasn't, and on top of that Jero didn't die. He was the brains behind Cell. Now that Jero took Cell away, what does he plan to do? Chapter 107. Back home, having understood that he was going to have to deal with Jero and Cell one way or the other, Raditz let out a breath. His work in this lab was mostly done by now. He'll send some drones to take samples later on. Now he should go out. They have stopped fighting for a while now. Did they win? Raditz mumbled. While he was searching for Jero and Cell, the Z-fighters went ahead and stopped fighting sometime in between. Raditz was glad nobody had died yet. He didn't know what the deal with Trunks' timeline was, but when all the Z-fighters died, everything went to shit. He had tried to sense planet Namek back in the future, but it couldn't be sensed. Somehow the series of events of Z-fighters dying results in Namek going undercover or getting wiped off the map. How this happened was something Raditz didn't know. so he chalked it up to butterfly effect. Maybe Gaku had been to Namek off-screen, and would have saved them from a sudden disaster, or maybe Dende leaving results in a series of events which saved Namek, something which didn't happen in the future. Regardless of what it was, Raditz knew the future was messed up, almost as if this timeline itself wasn't supposed to exist anymore and should end. And he didn't want the same thing to happen to the present. Swish. So putting 2 fingers on his forehead, Raditz initiated instant transmission and appeared before Nappa, who was panting while sitting on the ground, and looked up with relief and a little bit of guilt when he sensed Raditz arrive. What happened to the androids? Did you get rid of them? Raditz asked the resting Z fighters, and received his reply from Nappa. We managed to take down 19, but 16 left. After knocking us down he used the solar flare and left. We can't sense him so we don't know where he is now. Gaku, who was panting excessively and was getting cared for by Gohan, also began speaking slowly. Huff, what do we do now? Raditz folded his hands and pondered after hearing Gaku's question, and then let everyone know his idea. There's more to it than meets the eyes. I'll tell you everything I know in a second, then we will think of a way. For the time being, I'll get Vegeta. Swish. Teleporting before Vegeta, who was beaten up way too badly, Raditz swiftly knocked him out. Thump. Watching her opponent's body fall down, 18 also stood in place and blew her stray hairs away with a playful look. He kept on telling me he was a super elite. If this is how a Sun super elite is, then what are you? Super elite too? Ultra elite? Or is it godly elite? Rolling his eyes at 18's somehow weirdly accurate statements, Raditz gestured at Krillin to come out. The dude was hanging out in the background, unable to decide what to do. Oh Raditz, thank God you are here. Vegeta wasn't stopping. And what happened to the androids? Is everyone okay? While Krillin asked a bunch of questions, 18 had also walked up to Raditz and softly held his bicep. No, this wasn't her wanting to have some fun in the middle of a battlefield with a bald dude watching, it was her knowing Raditz needed to touch someone to initiate instant transmission, and taking the lead in making it easier for him. Krillin also ran up to Raditz by now, who held onto his shoulder, used telekinesis to pick Vegeta up and put him on his own shoulder. They are fine Krillin, I'll tell everything in a second, but 18, you and your brother are probably gone for good. 18 raised her eyebrows at those words, but she didn't feel too much sadness. This wasn't her or her brother, this was another version of them. And she didn't even know them, much less meet them, so she remained silent and didn't comment on the information. Raditz saw that and ignored it too. There are too many more important things to do now than comment on 18's heartlessness. Ready. Swish. Teleporting before the group, Raditz told everyone. Grab onto each other and one of you hold me, I'll take us to Capsule Corporation. The Z fighters picked themselves up and grabbed onto the person nearest to them, with Gaku holding onto Raditz's back. Ready. Swish. Teleporting once more, Raditz arrived at the garden of Capsule Corporation, where Panchi was watering flowers. Turning to look at the large group of people who appeared out of thin air, Panchi didn't look the least bit surprised, even if she had no idea what happened in the first place. She had an attitude like that towards everything, very much like an airhead Bulma. Raditz, would you and your friends like some snacks, dear? Asked Panchi with her hand on her mouth, smiling merrily. Piccolo and some of the serious Z fighters only twitched their eyes with a little bit of shame. Raditz, knowing the disposition of his mother-in-law, just nodded his head and said kindly, "Sure, that would be great. Can you please call Bulma for us? We have some things we want to discuss." Giving another big smile, Panchi said while turning around. "Sure thing, I'll be right back, dear." As Panchi left, the Z fighters scattered around the garden, some sat on the grassy ground, some perched atop the fence, some shamelessly held on to Raditz. 18, find yourself a spot. Raditz looked at 18 who was still holding on to him, and said lightly. 18 just smiled and said nothing, simply letting go of Raditz. She went and settled on the ground besides him. She didn't know anyone here, the best place for her was besides Raditz, whom she's supposed to be working for right now. After 18 left, Raditz also sat down and caught his breath, and it wasn't long after that Bulma came along. "Raditz, you are finally back, why didn't you meet me when you returned?" Bulma complained a lot, but mostly she just went up to Raditz and sat besides him. She wasn't a fool, she could sense this wasn't the correct mood. Touching his nose, Raditz smiled awkwardly. "Sorry, had some issues with Ultra Instinct, had to visit Master Roshi, then had to leave for the androids immediately." Bulma huffed but didn't say anything anymore. She wasn't a moron who would be furious on her partner for something not in his hands. Gaku meanwhile sneezed, wondering if someone was feeling sorry for him somewhere. Weird, he thought, before putting the thought away for the food that Panchi just brought for everyone. The Z fighters also followed along with Gaku's enthusiasm and quickly began eating their share. The sad atmosphere that was surrounding everyone was thus elevated amongst the laughter and taste of the food. Raditz also joined along and enjoyed the first feast after the battle. Then after everyone was nearly done with their food, he spoke the first important thing in a while, starting the discussion. "I have some idea on what has happened. Bulma and I have cracked some of Gero's tech. Cell, the most powerful android, has been activated, and he's currently missing. We might have a problem in our hands." The warm atmosphere cooled down almost instantly. Everyone stopped their fun and listened carefully. Raditz couldn't give them the information he brought out of the future yet. Now was a good time to get that, and then they will formulate a plan on what should be done to counter this hidden threat. Chapter 108 Warrior no more. Clearing his throat after their party was nearly done, Raditz attracted everyone's attention. Seeing that everyone has stopped their fun and were looking at him now, Raditz began laying down what he knew. What happened today was different from my expectations, none of this has happened in the future. 18 her brother 17 were supposed to come and start their destruction today, but as you can see, 16 and 19 took over instead. Picking up a glass of wine, Raditz swiveled it around and looked at his reflection in the red liquid. Gulp. Directly gulping down wine in a fashion only Xians can, Raditz clarified some more. Cell, that android form the future who had attacked Pai Pai a while ago, that android's counterpart is in our present too, and is now active. And he seems to have absorbed 17 and 18, Jero is with him as well, with 16 running away, we have quite a bit of problem in our hands. Although Raditz said it as such, Krillin relaxed a little after hearing that their biggest threat was an android Raditz had already defeated. With an expecting look to him, Krillin asked Raditz, but you can beat him right? You already did it once. Raditz though wasn't so optimistic. The future Cell I defeated was imperfect Cell, on pure strength alone he was weaker than 17. I don't even know if his weakness comes from not being able to absorb as many people, or if this is how strong imperfect Cell is. Picking up a large piece of meat, Raditz tore it from the bone with his teeth, and spoke while chewing. But if it's only that, it wouldn't be a big problem, I could still deal with it as I am now. The problem is that Cell has absorbed both 17 and 18, this changed him into his perfect form, it's a lot like King Cold's transformation. Tien with his hands folded narrowed his 3 eyes and voiced his questions. So how strong is he in his perfect form? Do you have confidence beating him? This was a question that mattered to every Z fighter, so everyone looked at Raditz, waiting for his answer. Raditz himself carelessly chewed the meat and thought for a while, before telling the truth. What I am worried about isn't his perfect form but his super perfect form, it's still a theory but there's a pretty good chance it exists. As for me beating him, maybe, recently I have powered up too much too fast in raw strength, I can't keep doing that unless I want to stop using Ultra Instinct. Gulping down the meat chewed to shreds, Raditz kept the large bone down on the plate. I can still get stronger by regaining what I lost of my Ultra Instinct, so I can certainly beat him, but I need to train for a while. Of course this won't be easy, I could only defeat 16 because he couldn't regenerate, and if what Bulma found is true, Cell can regenerate himself from even one cell. Hearing that, the only one capable of regeneration in the Z fighters, Piccolo, widened his eyes and exclaimed in shock. Regenerate himself from a single cell. Everyone had a similar reaction to this, they knew this type of opponent was way too hard to beat. Unless they can vaporize the entirety of Cell, which they can only do if they overpower him or trick him somehow, they weren't defeating him. The human Z fighters clenched their fists in frustration, they knew they can't get that much stronger anymore. If the opponent was above even 16, someone only their strongest fighters could deal with, they weren't touching Cell, no matter how they trained. All this was something Raditz saw clearly and lowered his head, silently chewing his food while thinking. This is it, the first time they realize they are permanently outclassed. This is the beginning of fall, the group won't last long, Yamcha, Tien, Krillin everyone will settle down and do their own thing after this. The era of Z fighters is officially over, and now begins the era of Xians. Raditz felt emotional, he knew how hard they trained and how competitive the bunch were. Losing that spark by being ruthlessly stomped out, is a thing none of them would like. This isn't your fault, it's how you were born that determines your upper limit, this is not in your hands. You lost because of something you can't control, pity. As for wishing upon a dragon to make them a Xian or something along those lines, none of the Z fighters would agree to such means of power, they would rather leave than shamelessly copy their rivals. Strength was something each of them earned, wishing upon a dragon for that was a behavior no warrior would ever do. These kinds of thoughts went on in everyone's head, in their own different forms, and finally Yamcha decided to speak. Guys, I don't think I can do this. I was defeated very quickly by 19, I won't be much more than a burden in the next fight. Sorry. After saying that, Yamcha got up and silently flew away, but none of the Z fighters spoke, because they realized that Yamcha had lost his heart. Nothing they could do would bring that back, and this would be the reason he won't be called for the universe tournament later on. As Yamcha, for all intents and purposes, was no longer a warrior from this point of time. Titsu, you stay out of this too. Soon Tien decided for his good friend Titsu. He knew Titsu would want to follow him if he tried to fight, but Titsu had long since hit a limit. Even before Yamcha did, so Tien spoke up for his friend, sparing him the humiliation. Got it Tien. Titsu agreed with his head down and flew away to their home. This once more, was the death of another Z fighter. Titsu too was no longer worthy of being called a warrior after this retreat. Even if it was the logical thing to do, it wasn't a way a proper warrior would have chosen. So he too, later on won't be considered for the tournament of power. But even under these conditions, some true martial artists prevailed. Krillin and Tien decided to stay. No matter how much the odds were stacked against them, they didn't budge. And this is why Krillin and Tien retained their heart, even when they are completely outclassed, the ability to fight against even that makes them real warriors. Unlike Yamcha and Titsu who only fought when it was possible to win, it is this difference in courage that brings in all the change. Another person who would have liked to stay out of this was 18, because she was no warrior, she was just an Earth girl who was made into an android and gained great power. But she smartly remained quiet. She was brought back by Raditz on some terms. If she stupidly decided she would stay out without consulting him, that would just put her in hot water. In fact, without showing it on his face, Piccolo was also wondering what he could do to gain strength, but unlike others, he already had an answer. I am going to the lookout, I will pay attention to Cell from there. And Raditz, find another Kami, we need the Dragon Balls to remain active. Without explaining further, Piccolo also flew away, his destination being the lookout. But nobody except Vegeta and 18 needed an explanation either. If Piccolo was going to the lookout and told them to search for a new Kami, that would only mean the evil half and good half were about to meet once more. Almost everyone here had been to Namek. Nameki and fusion wasn't something new to them, although they never saw it happen they knew about it. And just like that, the Z Fighters lost 3 of their members, Yamcha, Jitsu, and Kami. This wasn't a very good signal for the upcoming fight. Chapter 109 King Kai with Cell disappearing. The Z Fighters could only train hard for the upcoming threat. With the exception of Yamcha and Jitsu, everyone had begun their separate training. Piccolo together with Krillin, Tien, Goku, Gohan and Nappa were up on the lookout, while Vegeta and Raditz were staying at Capsule Corporation. Vegeta kept challenging 18 so he didn't leave, while Raditz himself had to help Bulma go over Gero's data and retrain his Ultra Instinct with Rashi. Whoosh! 18 attacked Raditz, who moved out of the way very simply. He was currently dodging with his eyes closed. Whoosh! Yet the simplicity at which he could dodge 18's attacks was something Vegeta was finding hard to understand. He had just fought 18 a while ago and was currently sitting on the sidelines with Rashi and Violet. Violet was bandaging him while Rashi looked at Raditz and gave him advice once a while. How is he doing that? He isn't even transformed yet, damn it. Vegeta silently clenched his fist, while Violet looked at him getting agitated and slowed down her bandaging. Even though Raditz's power level was not increasing, Vegeta could see that he was steadily getting stronger. Before Raditz's training he could still last for a few moves against him, now he had a feeling that he wouldn't be able to face even one. And this was when he himself was progressing. He also had an idea of taking Super Saiyan further. This was a conclusion both he and Kakarot had arrived at. I need more power, and Raditz, don't think I am sitting here while you are progressing. I can see it now, all I have to do is push beyond Super Saiyan. This was Vegeta's solution. Although both him and Goku arrived at the same conclusion, their paths were completely different. Goku understood the importance of mastering his current power before pushing for more, while Vegeta straight away wanted to push for more. And this is the reason Goku would end up with full power Super Saiyan while Vegeta ended up with the cumbersome Super Saiyan grade 2. Whoosh! Dodging another kick to his face, Raditz bent down and grabbed 18's leg, before throwing her out in one swift motion. Flip! Flipping mid-air 18 broke her fall and landed onto the ground. Raditz was fighting in his base and wasn't focusing on attack, so she could still manage to not get absolutely destroyed and thus help him train. Blink. Opening his eyes, Raditz adjusted to the light while stretching his aching body. Thanks for the help 18, said Raditz while he adjusted himself to his best state again, his amped regeneration taking away his fatigue bit by bit. 18 herself only huffed and folded her hands. Don't mention it. Vegeta meanwhile saw that Raditz's training was now over, so pushing away Violet who was bandaging him, he walked over. You, machine, fight me, said Vegeta, in his usual tone of voice that would make one believe he was the one superior to 18 in this instance. Well, Raditz couldn't blame him, 18 also acted exactly like that back in the future when she was the top dog. Turning towards Vegeta, 18 narrowed her eyes. I am not your training dummy. Before Vegeta could say anything else and escalate the situation, Violet figured she might as well not get her semi-husband killed. Vegeta, 18 said it for 12 hours straight. Although she has infinite energy, it doesn't hurt to take a break. Vegeta twitched his eyes at Violet's words, but after a bit of grumbling he decided to go and sit back down. Violet smiled and continued her bandaging work. She was a shrewd woman who had been in an evil army just like Vegeta, that together with the closeness of their relationship, made her understand Vegeta on a much deeper level than most. Same went for Vegeta. This is what caused the weird scene to happen, Vegeta actually listening to reason. 18 only looked at Vegeta with suspecting eyes and then soon huffed, looking the other way. Raditz and Rashi didn't say anything the entire time. Raditz was simply relaxing after a hard training while Rashi was in a world of magazines. When the two Saiyans trained here, back at the lookout the rest of the Z fighters were gathered. Goku had just finished eating his fill and put down the empty bowl of noodles. His blonde spiky hair was currently dancing freely with the wind. And Krillin who was sitting besides Goku found the time to be right, and asked his best friend something that was bothering him. Hey Goku, do you think Cell is going to attack? Even Piccolo Irkami? Still can't find him through the lookout. Goku grabbed his chin with a thinking expression before saying, maybe, even if he doesn't, we are still getting stronger. Krillin laughed a little at his best friend's carefree attitude. But although Goku maintained such a carefree attitude, Kamikolo didn't share the same sentiment. Goku, you should get a new Kami soon. I can't sense Cell anywhere, I have a bad feeling about this. Goku hearing that from Piccolo did regain a bit of his seriousness back. Currently everyone else was getting their training done while they rested a bit. So if he was going to do this, he might as well get it done now. Alright, I'll go to Namek. Putting 2 of his fingers on his forehead, Goku narrowed his green eyes, sensing King Kai's ki. Goku instantly teleported to Otherworld. Swish. Aik, Gaku, you scared me. King Kai fell off his car while screaming in fear. Gaku always did this, appearing and disappearing out of nowhere. Laughing if off, Gaku put his hands together in apology, and told King Kai the reason for his visit. Sorry King Kai, it's just that Kami has fused with Piccolo, so we need a new Kami. I don't remember any of the remaining Namekian's key, so I can't find the place. King Kai grumbled before getting up and walking up to Gaku. Did a new threat arrive, Gaku? Gaku nodded a little seriously as he said, yeah, androids, there's this guy named Cell. He became really strong after taking something from his future self. King Kai's eyes behind his glasses almost popped hearing that, but Gaku didn't care and continued. Trunks time traveled back to warn us about this thing dash. Don't tell me, be quiet Gaku. King Kai jumped and grabbed Gaku's mouth while sweating profusely. Ignoring the confused Gaku, King Kai looked around everywhere with a scared expression before releasing Gaku's mouth with a relief-filled sigh. Before he could say anything more, King Kai scolded in a hushed voice. Gaku, time travel is forbidden. Don't talk about it so casually. Gaku frowned, not liking that someone randomly forbids something and now he has to somehow obey such weird rules, but he wasn't one to question too much, so he listened to King Kai and scratched his head. But seeing that this wasn't going anywhere, Gaku brought the topic back on track. Okay, like I was saying, we need a new Kami. Can you find planet Namek for me? Pretty please King Kai. King Kai breathed a sigh of relief seeing Gaku dropping the time travel topic, and quickly started searching for Namek. He wanted Gaku out of his planet and didn't want to have anything to do with the time travel mess. He was not looking forward to Beerus and Whis coming for him, just because he knew about a time travel happen. Chapter 110 plus Gohan's Rage. King Kai looked like he was trying to lift something really heavy, but weirdly he had nothing in his hands and only his antennae were shaking. This wasn't found weird by Gaku nor King Kai himself, as this phenomenon was simply something which happened whenever King Kai searched the universe. Knowing about this fact, Gaku grabbed onto King Kai's shoulder without being told to, and after a while of searching King Kai finally found what he was looking for. Sighing with relief that he can now get rid of the time travel talks, King Kai exclaimed. There, Gaku, that's Namek. Now go. Gaku simply laughed King Kai's prudence off and put two of his fingers on his forehead. Waving at his semi-teacher, Gaku said happily, thanks King Kai. Swish. As Gaku vanished into thin air, King Kai wiped his forehead, the sweat pouring down still didn't stop. There, I have nothing to do with time travel. I don't even know anything about it. Lord Beerus, don't destroy my planet again. King Kai chewed his shirt while almost crying from fear, but slowly curiosity got the better of him. Looking everywhere to find no one around, King Kai crouched down and sneakily looked at Earth. After a while he had a disappointed as well as relieved look. There's no time travel happening, it must be a one-time thing. Let the Supreme Kais deal with this, I don't even have a time ring. King Kai finally convinced himself and put this thought away, taking a last look to Kami's lookout, where Gaku's son was training. He nodded. Gaku's son sure took over him a lot. While King Kai cut off the connection, Gohan didn't stop his training. Ha! Firing a Masenko, Gohan caught Nappa off guard and blasted him back. Bang! Somehow stabilizing himself, Nappa grabbed onto the lookout with his hands and crouched down to break the momentum. Huff, Gohan, you caught up to me in such a short time. Nappa said while huffing. Gohan had grown in strength greatly after he started training with him. So much so that he had surpassed Gaku and caught up to him in Ultimate. And Gohan was still a Super Saiyan, he didn't go past it yet. Thanks Uncle Nappa. Gohan smiled while rubbing his hair. He was happy to get praised once a while, it made him feel he was doing some progress. Nowadays he had a feeling that the stronger the opponent he fought against, the more his power increases with time. He didn't know if this was true, but it happened with Raditz, Cold, and now it's happening with Nappa. Uncle Nappa, should we continue? Nappa smiled while getting off the ground, and said with a little bit of a joking tone. Slow down bud, I am not as young as I used to be. Although Nappa said that, the flaring white key and lightning around him said something else entirely. He might be the oldest Saiyan alive right now, Paragus, but Saiyans don't age until much later in their lives. Nappa will remain in his prime for years to come. Let's get started kid dash. He's here. Piccolo's sudden exclamation stopped all the activities on the lookout. Looking at Piccolo's sweating face, Gohan asked with a concerned voice. Mr. Piccolo. Piccolo himself just sweated while watching a place where he finally found Cell in. He's at Satan's house right now. Cell has shown up. He was using someone else's key signature. When he powered down it was impossible to separate him from regular people. If he hadn't show up by himself, I wouldn't have found him. Solving the mystery of how Cell managed to hide for so long, Piccolo gazed down the lookout, with the Z-fighters coming to the edge themselves to take a look. And there they saw, Satan's house was in the ruins. Satan was being held up by his throat while his family, Videl and Miguel, lay in their own blood, dead. Clench. When Gohan saw Videl, who was as old as him, dying just like that, he felt rage after a long time, but this wasn't the right time so he bottled it up for now. But that doesn't mean he was happy with this. He had met the Satan family when Raditz brought him to them. Videl was his friend and Aunt Miguel was amazing. Their sudden deaths pissed Gohan off very badly. Whoosh. Gohan, wait. Piccolo yelled out from behind, but Gohan had already flown towards Satan household. His blonde hair dancing in the wind as little crackles of electricity appeared and disappeared on his body. His bottled-up rage didn't have an outlet yet, so Gohan was brewing, looking for Cell to unleash his anger. Meanwhile Cell himself, wholly unaware of what was coming for him, was smirking while holding the crying Satan from the neck. Why the crying face, Satan? Your family just left, are you missing them already? Satan was having trouble breathing and was disturbed beyond belief. He suddenly saw his daughter and wife collapse with their heads blown off. We were just watching TV. Satan grieved, but Cell didn't have time to play with Satan. Thump. Throwing him down on the ground, Cell folded his hands and smirked. I have an announcement to make, you can help me with that, Satan. Satan trembled and using his survival instinct he pulled out his cell phone. He needed to survive so he could tell Raditz what happened. Didn't Raditz promise to pull them out of Otherworld if they worked for him? Well, now was the chance. Cell, not knowing what was going on in Satan's mind, smirked seeing him pull up his cell phone and start a live broadcast. Hello people of Earth. I am Cell. Bowing to the audience which was beyond the screen, Cell announced with a smirk. You see, I am looking for someone. His name is Son Goku. He is someone I want to kill. But you see, he is surrounded by all kinds of pesky people, and that won't do at all. Cell shifted off to the side of the screen, exposing the headless bodies of Vidal and Miguel, causing shock to spread across the world. Then pointing his fingers towards their bodies, Cell said happily, this is a message for you Goku, if you don't show up, this will be the end of everyone on Earth. Boom. Firing an energy beam out of his hand, Cell annihilated both of their bodies, before smiling at the camera. You have my word, and before I forget, Raditz, or should I call you Saiyamon, you should come as well, join in on the fun. I have some personal score to settle with you after all. With Cell's work done, he smiled at Satan, then teleported before him instantly. Before Satan's wide-open eyes, Cell's tail rushed towards him. For the rest of the world, the live broadcast cut to black as soon as Cell vanished. But this broadcast was done from Raditz's official account, so nobody took this as a joke. This caused a widespread panic. Something the Z fighters simply couldn't care about right now, because within this time frame, Gohan had already reached Cell. Chapter 111 Junior. Just when Cell's tail was about to stab through Satan, bang! A green figure jumped in between them, and got pierced through instead. Cell was taken aback but soon didn't care, but Satan once more cried out, Kaba. Because this was the Cyberman given to Satan long ago, this was Raditz's gift, although he was dumb, after all this time Satan had developed some attachment to Kaba. So seeing him now struggling before Cell's absorbing tail was really sad for him. And Cell didn't miss the opportunity to torment Satan either. This green man seems important to you. He has good tenacity, it would be a shame. As soon as Cell said that, Cyberman began shrinking, as if water was being absorbed out of him. Cell smiled again, watching Satan's desperate look. If something were to happen to Dash, crack. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that Cell's mocking words were knocked out of his mouth together with his teeth, as a glowing fist slammed into him from the side, shutting his mouth for good. Boom. The fist carried such strength that Cell crashed through multiple buildings before helplessly getting buried in a particularly thick building. The Cyberman who was getting absorbed had also fallen down, although it was weakened, by virtue of being a plant, it survived anyway, and soon buried itself back into the yard soil, taking in nutrients to heal up and protect the parent plant again. But Satan didn't give more than one relieved sigh in this situation, because he had something way more urgent to think about. Gohan. Satan cried out of happiness, because the fist that had smacked Cell across the neighborhood was Gohan's, Raditz's nephew and Vidal's friend. If it was Gohan, everything would be alright. But Gohan himself wasn't so sure. When he had attacked Cell just now, Cell didn't feel as strong as they figured he would be. So Gohan didn't let his guard down, and soon the buried Cell crawled out of the pit, huffing and puffing. Serves you right, Cell. You dash. Stay back. Gohan immediately stopped Satan's words and put his hand before him, before seriously looking at Cell and saying, I don't think this is right, Cell feels weird. Swish. And as if responding to his words, Raditz flashed before the duo, teleporting to them the moment he felt Gohan's ki fluctuating against one he didn't know. Uncle Raditz. Turning towards Gohan, Raditz patted the boy's head. Good thinking, Gohan. I don't know who this is, but this isn't Cell. The panting Cell began laughing intermittently after hearing that, and slowly raised his head with a bloody mouth and still hanging smirk. Getting up shakily, Cell cracked his neck and soon burst into a plume of smoke. Poof. Releasing the transformation technique. He was transformed. Who is he? Gohan asked, taken aback by the technique's use. But Satan had enough of this, he didn't care who this guy was, whoever he was, he killed his family. And he wanted his family back, so holding Raditz's hand Satan begged Raditz. Boss, please, you gotta revive Vidal and Honey. Raditz, although was concentrating on the guy behind the smoke, did nod his head to calm Satan down. He would have revived them anyway, even without Satan's pleas. Did he get shorter? Asked Gohan with a confused look, because the smoke had now cleared and behind it stood a blue Cell, short in height and having a grinning expression. Raditz narrowed his eyes seeing the one behind the transformation technique. But Cell, or Cell Jr. didn't give Raditz the opportunity to question him, as he began speaking by himself. But it wasn't the shrill Cell Jr. voice talking, it was Cell's voice, talking through the Cell Jr. Raditz. You are here at last. Cell Jr. began walking towards the trio, without any fear whatsoever. How did you like my technique? Surprised I didn't come here by myself. Or did you already expect this to happen? Not replying to Cell immediately, Raditz first got in front of Gohan and Satan, shielding them behind him, then he finally folded his hands and spoke lightly. You overestimate me. I had only figured you wouldn't dare to show up before you plan your stuff, didn't know you would send whatever this is. Cell didn't mind the casual insults thrown his way and just laughed it off. This is Cell Jr. A rather interesting technique, I got it from Tien's cells. There's some Piccolo in there too, but it's mostly Tien. Cell shrugged and by now had walked up to Raditz, but the Cell Jr. body he was speaking through was so short that he reached Raditz's knees at maximum. So it became a really awkward stare down for everyone, but Cell himself didn't see it that way. And you are wrong, it's not that I don't dare show up, I simply can't show up right now, but soon I will come for you all. Putting his fingers up, Cell showed the number 3. In 3 days I will hold a tournament, you guys love those don't you, especially you Raditz, you got all your fame from there. So be sure to participate in this one, it will be grand. And it might just be your last. Look forward to the next announcement. Giving a smile which immediately rang alarm bells in Gohan and Raditz's mind, Cell said, goodbye. As soon as Cell Jr. said that, he began to puff up at a ridiculous rate, looking like a bloated flesh balloon about to blow up. Oh crap, he's about to blow. Raditz twitched his eyes and immediately put his hands on Cell's body, putting 2 fingers on his forehead. He started to think quickly. Shit, where do I teleport him to? I don't even know King Kai's key. But seeing the energy inside Cell almost reach the tipping point, Raditz knew he couldn't wait anymore and simply chose a place and vanished. Swish. Watching Raditz vanish, Satan gulped and asked Gohan. Asterisk, where did he go? Boom. But the loud yet dull explosion that soon shook the earth answered Satan instead. Looking at the fireball in place of the moon, Gohan said with a shaky smile. I guess he went to the moon. Moon? Is there a moon left anymore? Satan complained internally, but before he could voice his opinions. Swish. Cough cough. Raditz came back, coughing and burned up in many places. He still had lingering feelings of ear palpitations. This was something which would have killed Goku. Although he survived, it was because he got out in time and Cell Jr.'s explosion was on a lesser intensity than Perfect Cell's. But any delay in his actions would have resulted in a huge chunk of Earth getting blown off, and him dying as a result of the Earth crumbling into itself, taking any breathable air with it. Gero and Cell are maniacs. Raditz complained while spitting burnt blood, but Cell was still hiding and not showing his tail. They would just have to catch him when he arrives, and by then, they will be ready too. 3 days, so be it. 3 days is a lot of time for the Z fighters to do things, especially with the Lookout as their support. Chapter 112 A New Way Forward. It wasn't long after Cell's announcement that the Z fighters gathered at the Lookout. Rashi was included in that roster. Because today was the day they will enter the hyperbolic time chamber, Raditz had pushed his room of spirit and time session back all this time, just because the amount of times one can use it was limited, and he never had a real need for it, until now. Who's going to use the time chamber first? Asked Nappa. They had Raditz, him, Kakarot, Gohan, Vegeta, Krillin, Tien and Rashi who were interested. But they had only half of today remaining, and 3 more days afterwards. According to Dende, the new Kami, only 2 can enter together but he will upgrade the chamber later. Although that was good, they needed it now, and they had 4 groups who wanted in. Haha, then I will go in today. I can't help much, so I'll take today's remaining hours. And we don't have that much time remaining in the chamber anyway, we used a lot of it up for the Xians. So, you coming with me Tien? Krillin laughed in a semi-depressed yet acknowledging fashion, but Tien, hearing he was considered amongst the least powerful now, was clenching his fist with frustration. But he still walked towards the time chamber, without saying another word. Looking at Tien leave without replying to him, Krillin laughed in an embarrassed way and quickly ran towards the chamber as well. We will be off guys. Saying that, Krillin vanished into the interior of the Lookout. Vegeta was the next one to speak. I will be going in next. Raditz nodded and then arranged Vegeta's partner for him, because Vegeta himself would rather go alone if he was to choose. Consequences be damned. Nappa, you go in with Vegeta. Kakarot and Gohan, you both can go next. Me and Master Rashi would go in last. Everyone nodded as they had no problems with this arrangement, but Piccolo himself stayed out of this entire thing. Because he had already fused with Kami and understood that he was about to reach the end as well, although he can still get stronger, it would be very slow. So Piccolo by his wisdom simply stayed out of this and kept a watch on Cell, while teaching Dende what it means to be a Kami. Hey, I am starving. Can we get something to eat Mr. Popo? Goku smiled while turning towards Mr. Popo, who was taken aback but nodded happily, quickly going to the kitchen to make some food. And the remaining Z fighters also found this a good time to relax, sitting together with Goku. They also decided to dig into the soon coming food. Just like that, the day passed, and Krillin and Tien had come out a while ago. You guys surely got stronger, you are almost reaching 1 million, Tien. And Krillin, you have truly reached 1 million? Congratulations. Raditz smiled and congratulated them both. This was an incredible feat. Even Xians like Goku and Vegeta stopped around 3 to 6 million before reaching their end in base. Of course Broly and Raditz were a different story, but either way, this was very impressive for humans. It wasn't for nothing that the Xian-human hybrids acted as if they were the next step of evolution like their Universe 6 counterparts. Human bodies, except S cells and few more nitty-gritties, were quite similar to Xian bodies. After all, this was why Earthlings could keep up with Goku for so long, before Super Saiyan came around. Thanks man. Krillin rubbed his bald head and laughed happily. He trained crazily for half a year and had finally given up. After this fight with Cell, he will officially stop martial arts. He had done everything he could and was finally at peace with his situation. But Tien said absolutely nothing except giving a nod. He couldn't bring himself to act as if his strength was a big deal when it clearly wasn't in their situation. Raditz saw that but didn't comment. Everyone had their own path, no one likes others to meddle into their business. But still, while he watched Vegeta and Nappa leave, Raditz had a thoughtful look to him. Hey, is anyone interested in getting their potential unlocked? Asked Raditz completely out of blue, but this was a thing which got the attention of many, especially Tien. What is that? Asked Piccolo. Raditz wondered how he should put this. While he had learned potential unlock from Guru, it was also something which depended on a few factors. It is a technique I learned back at Namek. I can release someone's latent potential. But the power boost depends on your inherent potential and your current strength. Take Bulma for instance, if I unlock her potential, she would go from around a 5 to around 1,000. Pointing his thumb towards Rashi, Raditz continued. But if I unlock Master's potential he might jump from 100s to 10,000s. Although you guys are reaching the end of your species, but there has to be something more I can dig out. Almost immediately Tien walked up to Raditz and said, please. The rest of the Z fighters also pondered for a while, before some of them came forward. In the end Krillin, Tien, Rashi, and Piccolo came in, but Krillin suggested telling Yamcha and Tien suggested telling Titsu. So after Dende contacted them and brought them both over by Kai, 2 more participants were present. There are 6 people, this should work. Raditz mumbled. He had seen the human fighters struggling to keep up and frankly, he was impressed by their tenacity. Even the worst hit one, Yamcha, jumped at the opportunity to get stronger, even when it was obvious he would need to fight Cell after this and can't just pack up and leave after getting a boost. So against all odds, because of Raditz's arrival, the human fighters who should have lost all hope, were revitalized once more. Although this wouldn't be permanent, as there was no way they could truly keep up, but this nonetheless was a wake-up call for them, for their beliefs, and that was enough. Everyone, grab your nearest person's hands and sit together in a circle. This would be a long procedure, so if anyone has something to do, do it now. But nobody had anything to do it seems, they all came prepared, so going to the center of the lookout, everyone grabbed their nearest one's hands and sat down. Stretching his body, Raditz took a deep breath, and started circling around the nervous group. This was going to be a long one, it was the first time he had tried to unlock so many people at once. The most he was looking forward to was Piccolo's growth. Raditz wanted to know how far he could reach without the extra blessings of Shenron. Would he see Orange Piccolo? Or was that something specific to Shenron? Raditz couldn't wait to find out. Chapter 113 Super Saiyan Grade 3 Vegeta didn't bother with the potential unlock. He couldn't for the life of him receive help from Raditz, someone he wanted to defeat. So he quickly went inside the time chamber. It was after all his time to train so he couldn't bother with it even if he wanted to. Time passed, soon Vegeta and Nappa were done with their training. A day had quietly gone by, and when they returned Raditz's ritual was over as well. Huff. Breathing out after an entire day of hard work, Raditz finally put his hands down from their raised position. Done. Announced Raditz, and the almost sleepy Z fighters immediately became energetic. But I don't feel anything different. Asked Krillin with visible confusion, to that Raditz folded his hands and said lightly, just try to power up. Everyone who went with the potential unlock heard that, got up and stood a little distance away from each other. Whoosh. And one after another auras started to appear, with the spiking energy output of the Z fighters. Ha! Everyone soon powered up to their maximum, and looked at themselves with wonder. Opening and closing his fist Tien said with amazement while feeling his strength. I am almost 10 times as strong as I was before. Krillin also nodded and said excitedly. No kidding, same for me, I must have reached 10 million by now. But soon everyone's eyes turned towards Piccolo, who didn't stop even now and just kept powering up. The Z fighter's eyes changed, Piccolo's power was showing no signs of stopping. No way. Yamcha gasped. He had also reached 6 million plus, but Piccolo felt in a league of his own. He was approaching Raditz's power level right now. Titsu who had reached 4 million plus and Rashi who was now around 10,000 were also shocked by Piccolo's boost. Meanwhile Piccolo who was the center of attention was feeling amazing. He kept pushing, and soon was finally beginning to feel his limits. After he reached the end, he yelled with vigor and stabilized his ki output at maximum. After sensing Piccolo, who had finally stopped powering up, Raditz gave him a judgment. Piccolo, it seems you had a lot of potential inside you. Dende nodded excitedly, and said, with your strength, I don't think we even need to worry about Cell anymore. But this was something Raditz denied immediately. No, Cell isn't that easy to beat, as you know, he has every strong individual's abilities inside of him. On top of that, just like his name, Cell can regenerate even if only one of his cell remains. Looking towards Piccolo and Dende, Raditz continued. Cell has taken Nameki and regeneration to its utmost limits. Even if Piccolo is equal to Cell, he cannot do anything unless he destroys the entirety of Cell in one go. I have fought against a Cell Jr. before, something created using Tien's ability, and even after its self-destruction, some of its cells remained. Huffing after remembering the previous explosion, which almost took him out, Raditz said, I had to individually destroy all remaining cells of the Cell Junior, or it would have come back for more. It would be in our best interest to keep Cell from regenerating at any cost, or he might reappear and strike when we are least prepared. The mood soon became heavy because of Raditz's information, their enthusiasm dampened a lot. They had almost relaxed thinking Piccolo got this, after all his power level had surpassed even Raditz's peak now. But this mood was soon stabilized by Vegeta of all people, who scoffed and said while drawing all attention to him, you don't need the name Kian to do it, I can take care of Cell myself. It was now that everyone actually focused on Vegeta and remembered that he just came out of the time chamber. His broken clothes and balanced smirk was showing how overflowing with confidence he was right now. But Nappa, who was with him in the time chamber, tore apart Vegeta's bravado almost immediately. Vegeta, you can't even defeat me, and I am about as strong as Piccolo right now. That form of yours which gives you confidence, it burns through your stamina too quickly. Vegeta's proud expression froze and he glared at Nappa. Shut up Nappa, you cannot defeat me? That was an accident. Nappa rolled his eyes and grabbed Vegeta's shoulder, ignoring Vegeta's twitching eyes. You lost to me every time Vegeta, it's 100-0, and each time you lost is because you ran out of energy. I am telling you, even if you take inspiration from my body and remove that transformation speed issues, that buff from of yours isn't natural, it saps too much energy out of you. Vegeta simply clenched his teeth and got rid of Nappa's hands around his shoulder, snorted and blasted out of the lookout. Watching his form turn into a dot as he flew to God knows where, Nappa spread his hands before the confused Z fighters, and then turned towards Raditz. King, we both failed. Vegeta did go past Super Saiyan, he calls it Super Saiyan grade 3, but he can't keep it up for long. I have become strong as well, but I am about as strong as Piccolo over there. If he can't defeat Cell I can't either. Turning towards Goku, Nappa gave his advice, so that Kakarot doesn't take the same path as Vegeta. Kakarot, Vegeta's attempt is a failure. His transformation is far too slow, but he took inspiration from my body and used my movement techniques to overcome that. But it still saps too much energy out of him. If you can, try to find a different path forward. I don't think this is the right one. Goku smiled hearing that, as if he already had an idea, which was just confirmed by Nappa's words. Laughing cheerfully, he called Gohan, gave a thumbs up to Nappa and said merrily, I think I can do it. Gohan, let's go son, our time's running out. I am coming dad. Gohan replied to Goku and they both walked towards the time chamber in a resolute fashion. Raditz watched them go and smiled, but before he could try and fight against Nappa to see how far he had come, his communicator rang. Beep, beep, beep. Raising it up, he found it was Bulma who was calling. Yes Blue, Raditz asked while picking it up, and Bulma spoke from the other side. Raditz, I made armors for all of you guys, can you come and take it? I am at my sister's place, I am in the middle of an experiment. You know Dr. Omura has a time machine. After some yelling sounds came where an old angry voice was scolding Bulma for leaking top secret information just like that, and Bulma scolding him back and telling him to mind his own business. Bulma continued as if nothing happened. Yeah, I am a bit packed right now, can you please come and take the clothes? Raditz heard that, but frankly he wanted nothing to do with Dr. Omura right now. He knew if he goes there Bulma will rope him into the experiment. And he didn't have time to experiment with time machines right now. So groaning for a while, Raditz denied it. I am busy Blue, my turn at the time chamber is coming up in a day. If I go there I'll just end up working on the time machine. Bulma complained from the other side. But I made all these armors for you guys, you can't let it go to waste. While Raditz and Bulma were arguing, Krillin figured he could help. He basically had nothing to do right now, so he spoke up. I can go if that's okay. Bulma heard Krillin's voice through the communicator and pouted. She wanted her sister to meet Raditz, that was also a reason she called him in. But it seems that we'll have to wait for a while. Fine, you can come Krillin. Click. Bulma cut the call from the other side and Krillin instantly regretted his decision to help. Bulma doesn't seem the least bit happy, he'll probably be yelled at as soon as he goes there. Oh man, why me? Krillin then left with a sour face after Raditz patted his back with a laughing expression. Chapter 114 Beautiful blonde Krillin was flying through the skies and was soon about to reach Dr. Omura's lab, but his face was as helpless as it could get. He was so not looking forward to Bulma giving him a piece of her mind. You and your mouth Krillin, look where it got you now. Krillin complained to himself but strengthened his mind, because he was almost there. Looking at the island which was built into an experimental base and living place combined, Krillin landed near the lawn. Thump. Looking around for a moment, Krillin was about to go in and knock, but a woman came over from the side with a curious look on her face. Hey, who are you? Asked the blonde girl with a smile. Krillin was taken aback but quickly replied. Bulma called me? She's here. As soon as Krillin said that, the blonde girl had stars in her eyes and got a mischievous look on her face. Oh, Bulma called you? Are you that Raditz I keep hearing about? Quickly approaching Krillin, the girl looked at him closely, making Krillin startled and turn red from the sudden actions. The girl seems to have found it funny and laughed in a small voice. Hee, how cute. Straightening herself up, the girl smiled at Krillin and put her hands behind her. I am Tights, Bulma's sister. Mischievously looking at Krillin, she poked fun of the shy Raditz some more. You are a cute one, aren't you? You know, if you weren't with my sister, I wouldn't have minded. While Tights was trying to embarrass him because his reactions were funny, Krillin really did get a little flustered, so rubbing the back of his neck he laughed in a silly way. Ha ha ha, I am not Raditz, I am Krillin, I am his friend. And I not married either. Just so you know. The environment instantly becomes still and soon Tights' cheeks flushed. Oh god, what have I done? Tights only wanted to see her sister's husband's flustered looks because she thought it was cute. She wasn't trying to flirt with his friend on their first meeting. I am so sorry. I was told Raditz would arrive. I just wanted to know how my sister's husband was. Krillin quickly laughed it off too, lest the environment became even more embarrassing. Ha ha ha, it happens? In fact I am quite a close friend of Raditz. I am practically his best friend. We do almost everything together. I can tell you all about him. Krillin's sneaky mind instantly worked and he started to bullshit his way through. He wasn't as thick in the head as everyone around him, he knew a chance when he saw one. And everyone around him was getting married, damn it. He didn't want to be alone. I see. Tights still had a flushed look to her but slowly smiled back. That would be lovely, Krillin. Score. And while the world was hell-bent on giving Krillin a blonde beauty one way or the other, in a lab on this very island Bulma was working on a technology that might just shake the whole world. I am telling you, this is a bad idea. That galactic patrolman guy was hell-bent on people not messing with time. Omura scolded Bulma from the sides, but Bulma didn't care about that one bit. That galactic patrol guy can talk to Raditz if he has a problem, and weren't you making a time machine anyway? Omura twitched his eyes and turned the other way. I changed my mind. Bulma didn't believe a single punctuation that came out of this old man's mouth, so she rolled her eyes and kept going through the materials on time machine he had on his computer. Because no matter how old and dastardly this guy was, Dr. Omura was an out-and-out genius on space-time theories. It's fascinating. This is how you achieve time travel in the same timeline. You know I made a time machine as well, but it can't change the past. It creates a new timeline every time it's used. Bulma continued, not minding Omura's twitching eyes. But your time machine, even if it can only stop time right now, works directly on the current timeline. You know what that means. Omura gulped and looked at Bulma. He wasn't sure what nefarious schemes she might have. What does that mean? Bulma looked at Omura with a shine in her eyes. That means I can tell myself not to go to that saloon. My hair still hasn't recovered from that shampoo they put on me. Dr. Omura fell straight down and yelled immediately. That's what you would break the rules of the universe for? A bad hair day. Glaring at Omura, Bulma huffed. It's important? What would an old man like you know? Just when Omura was about to go completely crazy the door to the lab opened and two people came in. Hey Bulma, your friend is here, said Tights with a smile. Krillin also laughed and said hello to Bulma. Hey Bulma, long time no see. Looking at Krillin, Bulma scrunched up her face. If only Raditz was here. She wanted to tell him how the android's infinite energy solved the time machine's energy requirements. That means with just a little bit of work, this would be the perfect time machine. Not only was it capable of changing the actual past, it could also change the future. If needed they could also use it like her original one and create new timelines instead. But that's not all. From Omura's time stop mechanism she figured out how time can be accelerated and decelerated. I really wanted to show Raditz this formula. This proves something fascinating. Not only timelines, we can even visit entirely new spacetimes. Whole new realities, a whole new world with its very own timelines. Going on a date in an entirely new world would have been so romantic. Raditz, you dummy. Sigh, wait a minute Krillin, I'll get the armors. Krillin watched Bulma go into the storage room with an unsure look. He thought for sure he would be yelled at by Bulma, but whatever it is, he wasn't complaining. He was safe. But Bulma's sister looked concerned and asked Omura, what happened to her? Omura snorted lightly and got up from the ground. Who knows, maybe messed up her brain while messing with time. I heard that old man. Twitching his eyes Omura quickly ran away from the lab. He wasn't interested in getting an earful. Meanwhile Tights and Krillin looked at each other and soon shrugged. Tights let it go and simply sat down on the table. Smiling at Krillin she continued their talks. You said you are a reader yourself Krillin? I am writing a new book. Can you please take a look and give me review? Krillin immediately laughed and rubbed his head. Totally. Krillin took the drafts from the hopeful Tights and trembled right away. He understood nothing. The last thing he had read was Rashi's colorful books in his childhood. That was the limit of his literary knowledge. Oh man, why did I have to say that? Come on Krillin, you got this. Would Krillin finally turn the tables on Tights? Would he be able to sneak his way past his problems once more? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z, Chapter 115 Krillin's Resolve? Time passed very quickly, and Krillin, who should have gone back to the lookout in a few hours, stayed at Dr. Omura's house for 2 days straight. Tights being a big factor of his unnatural enthusiasm, but even these days had an end. No matter how much Krillin wanted to avoid it, the fated day was finally here. The day cell games begin. Krillin, look at this. This guy broke into a newsroom just to promote his tournament. He even killed everyone there afterwards? How awful. Tights gasped while looking at the TV screen. It was replaying what Cell had done a day ago. Tights was only seeing it now because she kept herself busy with her writing. She was always a bit behind on news because of that. It's just in. Mr. Raditz, also known as Saiyaman Prime, the latest tournament winner is going in person to the Cell Games. His Force team would be with him as well, so folks, we have nothing to fear. Because I am here. The screams of the audience repeating Xiaoman's classic lines almost detonated the atmosphere. Right now the Earthlings were aware of superheroes like Xiaoman existing, so they had a good ability to accept supervillains like Cell being a thing. As for the Xian attack, that was taken as an alien villain incident, because that was how the comics portrayed it and the crowd took that as fact. Even with King Furry's deliberate promotion of martial arts, the ability to accept that everyone can use ki was not something everyone understood correctly. They would rather believe their heroes would keep them safe, so unless something drastic happened like the future timeline, Earth wasn't going to take Cell games seriously either, not when they had Raditz to rely on. And Tights was aghast hearing that. Turning towards Krillin she asked, Raditz? As in my brother-in-law, what is he doing against a maniac like that? Although Tights was quite detached from the real world affairs, because of her being cooped up in this island, but even then she knew Xiaoman was a comic. A comic with Raditz as the main lead, yes, but she figured that was a merchandise thing. She didn't know he can actually fight. Wait, can he? But Krillin, seeing Tights unsettled, attempted to calm her down in panicked way. Hey, relax, Raditz is really strong, he is even stronger than me. Hearing that Tights looked hopeful, and Krillin wanted that look to stay on her face, so he continued with enthusiasm. And you know, Raditz isn't a human like us, he is an alien. His species is called Xian, and all of them are ridiculously strong. But this caused Tights to frown. With a finger to her chin, she pondered. Xian? Where have I heard this before? After a few seconds, her eyes opened wide as she exclaimed. Oh, I remember now. Jaco told me he was on Earth to hunt down a Xian. Krillin? Aren't Xians supposed to be really evil guys? Does Bulma know? Before Krillin could try and put out fire he had unintentionally caused, a voice cut into their conversation. Evil? That's not very nice to say about someone behind their back. Tights froze, she mechanically looked back and then she saw it. A large man was standing behind her, his body was full of muscles bulging out of his tight-fitting clothes, a full head of spiky hair reached up to his waist, acting as his crown. But most of all, those glowing yellow eyes which were looking at her, that was what made Tights freeze up like a deer in headlights. This is a Xian. Oh my god, how was Jaco going to fight someone like this? But Tights wasn't from the Briefs family for nothing, she had her own fair share of outer space adventures in her days. So she gulped her fear away and laughed in an embarrassed way. Ha ha ha, I am joking brother-in-law, I am Tights, Bulma's sister. Please don't kill me. Raditz twitched his eyes seeing Tights bow to him while saying something like that. But before he could tell her not all Xians were evil, or even fighters for that matter, someone else did. Sister, stop embarrassing yourself. And Raditz, don't scare my sister like that, said Bulma, who had just entered the room, and hearing her sister's entry, Tights collapsed onto the sofa. She was safe? With how Bulma just spoke to Raditz, he is definitely no evil Xian. Jaco lied to her again. She will give him a piece of her mind next time she sees him. I was so scared. You married an alien, Bulma? You never told me. Bulma gave a smile while coming towards Tights and sat herself beside her sister. Giving her sister a pout, Bulma said, You are always hiding in this island. I didn't have the chance to tell you. You would have known if you visited once a while. Tights gave a sheepish look to Bulma and joined her hands together, apologizing to her sister. Sorry, I got too busy with my new story. I couldn't find the time. And sorry brother-in-law, a friend of mine named Jaco told me Xians are evil. Raditz smiled. Seeing that the sofa was full he simply sat himself in the air, while Krillin rubbed his head and went to sit on the table. Remembering the name Tights mentioned, Raditz rubbed his chin while saying, Jaco? The Galactic Patrolman? He isn't wrong. A long time ago Xians worked for the Frieza army. He was Universal Pirate. Our name wasn't that good because of that, but even so, just like any other species, we have good and evil amongst us. Well, ignoring Vegeta, I suppose only the good remain now. Hearing that Tights remembered something again, Jaco might have told her this once, the Xians were nearly extinct. Startling herself, she bowed to Raditz. Sorry, I didn't mean to remind you. Shaking his head Raditz said. It's nothing, now I have built a new family with Bulma, the past no longer matters. But something else does. If I am not to repeat the tragedy of planet Vegeta on Earth, we have to defeat Cell. The Cell games begin in an hour. Are you ready, Krillin? We need you in this. Tights gulped and looked at Krillin. Can her noseless bald-headed friend really stack up against Cell? Even with what Bulma did to him a day ago, was that enough? Krillin himself rubbed the back of his head while laughing and then grabbed onto Raditz's shoulder like he was his best buddy. You can count on me, pal. We will fight back to back, just like the old times. Hearing this, Raditz gave Krillin a look that said was he out of his mind, and Krillin frantically gestured with his eyes to play along. So twitching his lips, Raditz just decided to stay quiet. Who knows what nonsense Krillin had said before. But something else in this conversation sparked Raditz's interest, and just after that, he noticed something peculiar. Krillin, why can't I sense you? Krillin stopped grabbing Raditz's shoulder and laughed once again. Giving a peace sign to Raditz, he declared. You see, what happened is Bulma found 17's design drawings in Jero's computer. She was working on this big machine while I saw it. You know, 18 was a normal teenager named Lazuli before Jero made her into a cyborg. And seemed pretty strong too, fighting against Vegeta like that. So I figured I am reaching a limit, why not do what they did? I can't be worse than them, right? Ha ha ha. Hearing Krillin's implications, Raditz's eyes widened as he looked at the man in shock. Was Krillin so dedicated to martial arts that he would go so far as to make himself into an android? And I can impress Tights if I do well in the tournament? You are a genius, Krillin. Raditz twitched his eyes, and there it was, Krillin's real thoughts on the matter. Now Raditz just shook his head. This was Krillin all right. I see. Raditz finally managed to say, before decisively turning towards Bulma and saying, you called me for the armors. I thought Krillin was handling them, but it seems. The husband and wife looked at Tights and Krillin once, which caused them to blush, before they turned around. And Bulma, after having enough of pulling her sister's leg, said to Raditz, yes, but Krillin was a bit busy. After turning silent for a bit as she looked at the time, Bulma pursed her lips. Raditz, can do it? Can you defeat Cell? Raditz just smiled at his wife, before his eyes turned grey and his hair, in the odd eyes of the crowd, started flashing white intermittently. I think I can do it, Blue. I have achieved something quite remarkable in this year. Now Bulma didn't know what this was, but she had seen Super Saiyan before, so she thought this might be a legendary Super Saiyan thing. What nobody knew, was that this was something way more noteworthy than simple Super Saiyan. Raditz had finally managed to go past Omen and was beginning to realize the real Ultra Instinct. His black hair flashing once a while was a signal that a mortal was about to step into the domain even gods couldn't. Chapter 116 Cell Games begin. After a little more back and forth with Bulma, Raditz, and Krillin decided to leave. Giving Bulma a tight hug, Raditz smiled and grabbed onto Krillin's shoulder. The next thing he knew, Raditz had teleported them to the location he could sense the Z-Fighters in. Swish. After appearing besides the Goku, Raditz looked at the surroundings he was in. They were here at last. The Cell Games. By now the Z-Fighters as well as Cell himself seems to have noticed Raditz and Krillin's arrival. Raditz. Welcome to the Cell Games. Cell slowly spread both his hands and loudly announced. It was the first thing Cell has said since he set foot here a day ago. Even Goku's arrival had him smirk only once. But now, he knew the true force had arrived, and he, Cell, was also ready. As he had gone beyond perfect, he was now super perfect Cell, a power greater than Super Saiyan, one beyond no equal. While laughing loudly, Cell closed his eyes on the stage. He felt the power boiling within him. The days he spent with Gero let him grow beyond his supposed limits. The form he should have achieved after his rebirth from a single cell in the original was achieved by him from the get-go. Cell had fully unlocked and mastered his own version of Super Saiyan 2, something he liked to call Super Perfect Cell. Now, let dash. Wait a minute. Satan's interruption stopped Cell's announcement, something which caused a nerve to pop up on Cell's forehead. Turning towards Satan, who was standing with his camera crew, Cell glared at him. But Satan somehow glared back. Even if his legs trembled, Satan might be a hell of a coward, but Cell killed his family in cold blood. Satan wasn't going to back down, especially now that Raditz was around. In Cell's murderous eyes, Satan ignored him and exclaimed nervously to Raditz. Mr. Raditz, we are going to start the broadcast? I tried to tell everyone to get dressed in their Saiyamon outfits, but they didn't. It's important for promotion and merchandise sales. Hearing this, Raditz twitched his lips and turned to look at the Z-Fighters, who looked like they ate a lemon. None of them want to wear it. Fair. I don't want to either. But this is indeed good publicity. If we don't take the opportunity now, who knows if everyone will forget the Sun's horrors when Bu arrives. And if that happens, they wouldn't be able to beat Bu by any means whatsoever. Spirit Ball was the only thing that can even come close to killing evil Bu. That too was because of its evil cleansing properties. As for killing good Bu, nothing they had could kill him. Even when turned to literal smoke, the magical man can reform just fine. So building a lasting image of the Saiyamon force fighting against strong enemies was a must, otherwise Spirit Ball might as well be a bust. After thinking about the problem for a few seconds, Raditz snapped his fingers. Hey, Bulma made some Saiyan armors, how about that? Will that work as promotion? And it's practical too, anyone's interested. Piccolo immediately scoffed and turned the other way. Tien also looked at the sky. Jitsu seems like he wanted it but stuck with Tien. But others, even Yamcha, Goku, and Gohan were interested in the armor. But that wasn't that big of a surprise. Goku and Gohan went for it even during the original Cell Games. Even if the armor design this time was much closer to Super's Vegeta's gray-white armor, it was still a practical thing. Snap. Excellent, stay still. Taking out a mini projector, Raditz pointed it towards the group. This was the same technology which projected Gohan's Saiyamon uniform on him from his watch. But this one was a group device, so within a blink of eye, Goku, Gohan, Nappa, Vegeta, Krillin and Yamcha were given new armors. Wow, it's pretty cool. Krillin exclaimed. This material was familiar to the material Raditz used for his armor. So it's good stuff for sure. The help they will get is immense. Are you done? Cell's voice, which hid his rage, suddenly sounded from the arena, and the Z-Fighters become cautious. Even Satan didn't say anything and quickly ran back to the camera crew, turning on the camera. Cell still seemed angry but scoffed and put on a smile once more. If you are done playing dress up, let us begin the Cell Games. Looking at Cell's majestic momentum, Vegeta snorted and said in a disgusted tone. Cockroach, get on with it. I don't have time to waste with your pathetic games. Cell simply laughed that off with confidence. He didn't mind the jab at all. After all, why would he? He was perfect. From his looks to his power, he was the epitome of perfection. And Vegeta? He didn't even reach his own species' optimum height? How pitiful. Ho ha ha ha, Vegeta, always so arrogant, but I am not the first fighter you will face. I am the main opponent, Vegeta. The final hurdle, only after you get through them is that you would reach me. Vegeta frowned and stared at Cell, as he spoke sarcastically. The air around you. Cell laughed once more and then swiftly raised his wings, and from his behind a tail swung out, which opened a hole right at the end. Glurg. And began spitting out blue Cell-looking creatures. The Z-Fighters looked on with shock and a bit of disgust while the Cell Juniors took shape. And finally, after spitting 10 Cell Juniors, Cell stopped. Vegeta, defeat them before you get to me. Vegeta and the rest of the Z-Fighters looked cautiously at the Cell Juniors. Tien especially looked shocked, because he understood this was his technique, but the thing is, Cell took it way beyond he ever did. Where he had to divide his power in half for every clone and got weaker as a result, Cell wasn't weakened in the least, and the Cell Juniors, all of them were half as strong as Cell anyway, which meant they were as strong as a Super Saiyan. The current Cell was in his super perfect form, which corresponded to Super Saiyan 2, half that strength gave each Cell Junior the strength of a perfect Cell, or his version of Super Saiyan. But amongst all this, Raditz frowned. He felt something was amiss. Cell might be strong, but he couldn't possibly think he will survive the onslaught of every single fighter here. In Original he had enough confidence in his strength that he could make the rules, but here, why would he risk it? Is it just blind confidence? So Raditz decided to see what Cell's game plan was. And pray tell Cell, why can I not rush over right now, and tear you to pieces? Cell looked at Raditz with his scheming eyes, the ones he always had in his imperfect Cell form, and he slowly said, "Oh, I would have forgotten if you didn't remind me, Raditz. You can try and break the rules, but then West City will also go up in flames." Raditz's veins popped hearing that. That was where Bulma and Pipey were at. It wasn't only Raditz, every Z-Fighter had a scared and angry expression to them. Cell was holding the entire city hostage? Don't look at me like that. It was Dr. Gero's idea. Kill Goku at all costs, is what he was going for. If you want to complain, go to him. Cell shrugged, but he didn't seem opposed to this idea at all. He can't care less about West City if his goals were met. Raditz clenched his fist while looking at Cell like a dead man. But he regained his senses just as quickly. Breathing out, Raditz looked at the Z-Fighters. They all conversed eye to eye for a second and then it was decided. Okay Cell, we can play your little game. But once I get my hands on you, you will regret Gero ever made you. Cell laughed boisterously at Raditz's empty threats and jumped off the stage. All the Cell Juniors except one did the same. Looking at the Cell Junior ready for battle, Cell smiled with full bloodthirsty attitude, and announced with thrill, "Let the Cell Games begin." Chapter 117 Piccolo vs Cell Jr. The Z-Fighters were looking at the Cell Jr. on stage with trepidation. He was a strong foe. But this was a stage, a tournament, so although the human Z-Fighters couldn't fight a threat on the level of perfect Cell one-on-one, they can still use the rules of the tournament to win. After all, if Cell wants this tournament to go on, he also has to follow the rules. Who wants to go first? Asked Nappa, while looking at the people around him, and before anyone decided for sure, Piccolo dropped his turban. Bang! Which made a hole in the ground from its sheer weight, cracking his neck. Piccolo, who was now the nameless Namekian and a potential unlocked super Namekian to boot, looked ready. "Let me handle this," said Piccolo while having a smirk form upon his face. From the moment he had his potential unlocked he was dying for a fight, and if his estimates were right, he was just as strong as this Cell Jr., which put him beyond a mastered Super Saiyan. Piccolo was now stronger than Vegeta, and he was going to be the opening act. Step. Jumping onto the stage, Piccolo removed his cloak and let it flow on the wind. The cloak fluttered and gracefully crashed onto the dirt ground, away from the stage. Piccolo. Seeing Piccolo come up, the Cell Jr. spoke in a sing-song voice, something which had raised its twitch, because in the original they weren't known to be very smart or vocal for that matter. They were more like a bunch of Cybermen. It's likely that Cell going super perfect resulted in them getting a boost, intellect included. Humph. Piccolo snorted and got into his stance, but the Cell Jr. only jumped up and down and laughed like a fool. Still, the murder in its eyes was showing he was anything but a fool. The Cell Jr. was very much ready to kill. Heya! Piccolo began with a one-handed Masenko, something which had the Cell Jr. widen his eyes and hastily defend itself. Gawk! Screaming as he felt his hands burn, the Cell Jr. was swiftly pushed back, almost reaching the edge of the arena, which caused him to panic. Piccolo saw this and went for a knockout. The opponent wasn't so smart after all. Whoosh! Rushing up to the out-of-balance Cell Jr., Piccolo swung his leg and snapped a deadly kick towards the Cell Jr., who looked even more panicked, but just before the kick connected. Smirk. He smirked, which caused alarm bells to go off in Piccolo's head. Bang! Immediately taking advantage of his short height, the Cell Jr. rammed into Piccolo's stomach, his elbow sinking into the green man's gut. Gah! This had Piccolo spit out his stomach acids mixed with blood, but the Cell Jr. had no intention of stopping in the slightest. A swift punch to Piccolo's chin almost snapped Piccolo's neck, as the force threw him off the edge and back into the arena. The Cell Jr. followed up and laughed merrily, but just as he was about to deliver an axe kick to Piccolo's head, he rolled out of the way. Boom! Which caused the attack to fall on the ground, cracking the pavement in the process. Swiftly balancing himself back up, Piccolo gazed at the Cell Jr. and spat some green blood out of his mouth. His opponent tricked him using his foolish behavior, but he won't make the same mistake twice. Wiggle. Piccolo's hands softened, and before the Cell Jr. could understand what was going on, his hands stretched and swiftly grabbed onto the Cell Jr. "Come here." and pulled the freaked out monster towards him, and when he was almost up to his face, Piccolo opened his mouth and it began shining yellow. Aik. When the Cell Jr. saw that, he let out an intense scream. This wasn't an attack he wanted to get hit head on with, at all. But he was powerless, no way was he getting out of Piccolo's grasp this easily. So before its scared eyes, the yellow beam of energy erupted. Whoom! And covered the Cell Jr.'s body entirely. Piccolo's hands let go at the right time and the Cell Jr. screamed in terror, but quickly became quiet. Because in these few seconds, his entire body was completely vaporized. Huff. Piccolo huffed. He had gone for the kill straight away, because he had kept in mind Raditz's warnings. The decision to completely evaporate his foe wasn't a tough choice to make for him. Alright. Seeing Piccolo ending the fight so simply had morale soar amongst the Z fighters. Piccolo was currently one of their strongest fighters. Him losing wasn't something they would have liked to see. And thankfully he didn't disappoint. Piccolo made short work of his enemy, even when his enemy was about equal to his strength. These guys don't have much experience. They are strong, but most of their experience seems to come from their instincts. Tien seriously analyzed. He had a very good grasp on what clones should and shouldn't be able to do, this being his racial ability. So he found a flaw in Cell's technique pretty easily, where Tien's clones were essentially him, Cell's clones, while stronger, weren't him. This made their battle IQ remain at the level of instincts. This was a major flaw and was something they can exploit. Hearing Tien's breakdown, Goku nodded as well, before saying, "They don't look that smart, we should be able to beat them." While the Z fighters discussed and prepared countermeasures for their fights, Piccolo turned towards Cell, which caused Cell to smirk. He didn't look the least bit bothered that his Cell Jr. just died. So raising his hand, Cell announced, "Piccolo wins the first round. Now, would you like to continue fighting? Or is there a different challenger amongst you?" Piccolo wasn't hurt, so he was ready to continue fighting, but before he could say that, another voice cut in. "Name Kian, it's my turn next." Vegeta's aggressive speech wasn't appreciated by Piccolo, but it was very funny to Cell. Watching them fight amongst themselves was a joy like no other. "Vegeta, don't act rashly." Nappa attempted to pacify the situation, but Vegeta scoffed. Directly making a ki blast, he pointed it towards Piccolo, which caused Piccolo to growl. He was sick of Vegeta messing up important things. But before either of them could fight, making Cell's job easier, Goku said with a smile, "Oh come on Vegeta, don't be like that. We all want to fight. We will get our turn eventually." Hearing that, Piccolo stopped, then scoffed at Vegeta and turned around. He understood Son was basically telling him he wanted to fight too. So Piccolo gave up. Either way, he might be out of the match, but he wasn't dead, was he? He would join in right away if Cell does anything suspicious. "Have it your way then." Saying that, Piccolo jumped off the arena. Vegeta smirked seeing that and directly flew up to the stage with his hands folded. He was going to show everyone how strong a Super Saiyan was, and then he will kill Cell by himself. Chapter 118 At any cost. Vegeta stood in the middle of the stage and looked at his opponent, another Cell Jr. staring at him with a malicious gaze. Vegeta smirked seeing that smug blue face, and suddenly he clenched his fist, in response to the stress his body was feeling. His forehead had veins bursting out. "Hey. Then he yelled out with all his might. His aura soon turned a glowing yellow as he quickly transformed into a Super Saiyan. Ignoring the short Cell Jr. before him, Vegeta turned towards the big Cell and smirked. "Cell, you might as well stop playing these silly games. My power is beyond your imagination." Cell just laughed at Vegeta's arrogant words and looked at him confidently before saying, "Is that so, Vegeta?" Vegeta scoffed at Cell in distaste. He would show Cell how wrong he was in underestimating him. So he decided to give Cell a taste of what the prince of all of what a super elite was capable of. Smirking haughtily, Vegeta pointed his thumb towards himself and declared, "You don't understand, Cell, do you? I am already way beyond your abilities. You think I don't know about the power you are hiding?" Cell frowned slightly hearing Vegeta's words. Did Vegeta know something about his super perfect form? But Vegeta didn't give him the chance to think further, as once more he clenched his fists and veins popped on his forehead. "Haaa." Vegeta soon began screaming loudly again as he focused on releasing his energy outwards. Time passed bit by bit and the arena began to shake uncontrollably. An earthquake of magnitude 4 was beginning to take shape in the area, and as Vegeta kept powering up further, the scale was only increasing. Whoom! It was as if a threshold was breached. When the earthquake reached its most violent state, Vegeta's muscles began bulging rapidly. Aik! With a final shout, Vegeta seems to have reached his desired threshold, and gave a final yell to solidify his power. As the energy and winds died down, the Z fighters and Cell could finally see it. There he was. Vegeta was standing there with his massive muscles. "Wow, Vegeta really is stronger than Cell," Yamcha exclaimed. The Cell he sensed right now was somehow a bit weaker than Vegeta was. But Nappa wasn't so optimistic. "He is, but he can't maintain this state for long. This is called Super Saiyan Grade 3. Vegeta shouldn't have used it here. He should have kept it against Cell. He might run out of energy before he can finish the job. It's too risky." Nappa's words were echoed by the majority of the Z fighters. They also understood this form not only was incredibly slow and cumbersome, but it was also extremely energy intensive. Vegeta shouldn't be able to use it for long. But Vegeta himself had no such thoughts. After he got rid of the speed issues of this state, he had the idea that as long as he finishes the fight quickly, the short time frame didn't matter at all. So Vegeta's entire idea was getting rid of Cell Jr. as quickly as he can, before attacking Cell directly. You there, trash. Perish. Vegeta turned towards the Cell Jr. before charging up a large ki blast with both hands. Just when the Cell Jr. was panicking, Vegeta attacked the Cell Jr., launching the energy blast straight at him. Crack. The Cell Jr. at the last second moved his head out of the way, but his entire left side of the body couldn't move out in time, getting incinerated in the process. Aaaaa. The Cell Jr. yelled out in pain, before clutching his left side and glaring at Vegeta. Vegeta looked back, amused at the torment his opponent was going through, but the smile on Vegeta's face didn't last long when the Cell Jr.'s wounds wiggled. Splash. And abruptly an entire new left side grew out of the mangled body. This caused Vegeta to frown, before he smirked once more. Regeneration? Ha, it didn't stop the Namekian from killing you, why do you think it will stop me? Cell couldn't help but laugh at Vegeta's words in a low voice, breaking the atmosphere, which caused everyone present to look at him. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. This made Cell finally unable to control himself as he began laughing uncontrollably. Everyone was on guard. Cell was smiling all this time as if killing Cell Juniors didn't matter at all, and now this, he was laughing like a madman. Something was off. So they realized something after all. Oh well. Cell thought before smirking maliciously, then as if a scheme had succeeded he proudly spoke. Vegeta, you might be able to destroy him, but for that you have to catch him. Vegeta frowned. What did Cell mean by that? Cell continued, as if he had full confidence he will win even if they knew what he was talking about. You see Vegeta, I have the cells of each one of you, I can regenerate like Piccolo, I can split myself like Tien, I can transform like King Cold. And the same trick doesn't work on me more than once, just like Goku. The Z Fighter's eyes went wide, and so did Cell's smile. He spread his arms before happily announcing. The more you fight the Cell Juniors, the more ways you destroy them, the more they will learn. You can never kill me or the Cell Juniors in the same way twice. So go on, make me complete, make me without a weakness. The Z Fighters now understood why Cell bothered with the tournament in the first place. Cell knew he had everything needed to be the greatest warrior since birth, but one thing he didn't have was experience. This was the only place he could ever be defeated in. To counter this, a tournament was held by him. And now one of his goals was complete. This time around he learned he could be trapped and obliterated. Next time, this trick won't work on him again. Piccolo, who was the one to fight Cell before this, almost boiled listening to what he just heard. Damn it, we can't keep fighting the Cell Juniors? If we defeat them he wins, if we lose, we die, and he still wins. The more we fight the more we will lose. We have to stop him now. Piccolo growled in a terrified way. The fighters also were starting to think this might be the best bet, but as if Cell knew what they were thinking, he raised a finger and waved in around. I wouldn't do that if I were you, unless you want West City to go up in flames. Poor Bulma, she might not make it at all. The Z Fighters faltered once more. They were incredibly angry but there was nothing they could do. But somehow even after hearing all this, Raditz's face was plain, although the veins wiggling all over his body clearly showed how much rage Raditz was burying inside him right now. Cell smiled happily at the Z Fighters' reactions, but when he found out that Raditz was still not reacting, he clicked his tongue. He thought for sure he could see a helpless angry face on him, but alas, the Saiyan King seems to have exemplary control over his emotions. Turning towards Vegeta, who was incompetently raging because he understood he was being used as a training dummy, Cell laughed loudly. And then there is Vegeta, how pathetic. Cell thought, before he snapped his fingers, he just decided to make it quick. He wanted to know his possible weaknesses as soon as possible, and then, he wanted to kill Goku before fighting Raditz to his heart's content. Kill him, ordered Cell. The Cell Jr. looked aghast at the order, but then angrily looked at Vegeta, who frowned seeing that reaction. He had seen that look before, that was the look of a person about to die. Vegeta decided to not risk it and instantly appeared before the Cell Jr. Boom! And a hand knife destroyed the entirety of the Cell Jr.'s head. Thud! Resulting in his headless body falling down as if its strings were cut. Smirk. Vegeta smirked seeing that, but before he could destroy the rest of the dead body, the fallen Cell Jr.'s body moved as if possessed. What? Let go! And grabbed onto Vegeta's leg. Vegeta tried to shake it off but almost at the same time, the headless torso grabbing onto him began to balloon up. Gohan, who had seen this before, exclaimed in shock. He going to self-destruct. Vegeta's eyes opened wide and he quickly began punching the headless torso grabbing onto him. Bang! 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 Let go, you worm! Bang! But even with the dented body the Cell Jr.'s torso held onto Vegeta's leg with all its might. TCH. Just before Vegeta could take the risk and blast off his leg together with the Cell Jr., his eyes shrunk. Boom! And a blast of massive magnitude covered the arena. Raditz and Tetsuo responded quickly and deployed a telekinetic barrier around them. But it didn't stop the Z Fighters from feeling afraid. Just now after that attack, Vegeta's ki vanished. One mistake, that was all it took for Vegeta to die. Even with all that strength, the bulkier form finally got to him. If only he wasn't so pumped full of muscles, he would have kept his flexibility. This kind of build was why Tetsuo could self-destruct on Nappa's back and now Vegeta experienced the same thing himself. Vegeta was now out of the fight, for good. Chapter 119 Counterattack. Everyone's mood was pretty shaken up after Vegeta's death. Gohan was hollow-eyed seeing one of their own die, and the fact that he couldn't attack Cell right away made him clutch his fist in anger. He was feeling how he would have felt watching Videl fight Spopovich, forced to watch something you want to stop immediately. A horrific feeling. Thump. The explosion slowly dissipated from the stage and Vegeta's body fell to the ground with a thump. Is that? Never mind. Raditz's eyes twitched watching the familiar pose Vegeta took. But the Z-fighters weren't given time to think. Cell had already pointed towards Vegeta's corpse, which released a telekinetic burst, throwing it off the stage. Crash. Vegeta's body landed on the ground before the Z-fighters, and Raditz didn't want to let it stay in the dust, so quietly picking it up he gave the body to Nappa. Keep him safe, we will get him back sooner or later, said Raditz, hearing which Nappa nodded and went towards the camera crew. He wanted to borrow some storage capsules. After taking care of his fallen teammates the Xunwei, Raditz huffed and looked at Cell for a second. Cell was threatening him time and time again, and he wasn't about to just suck it up and die. If Cell thinks this strategy of his will work for long, he had another thing coming. Next contestant, come on up, tick-tock, time's ticking. Cell spoke in a tone which simply showed he was treating this as a game, and them as animals performing in this sick game. The fighters also knew they had to go now, and it was Goku who was about to go up, but before he could, Krillin gripped his fist and said, "Everyone, is it alright if I take this one?" Goku scratched his head and looked a little awkward, then said to Krillin in a mild way, "Well, he is a little too strong." This was Goku's way of saying that Krillin will get dusted if he steps into that ring. But Krillin had different plans, except Raditz. Nobody knew he was now an android. He was tougher, more resistant to fatal damage, and most of all, he still wanted to show Tights how cool he was. So he wanted to take this opportunity to take Cell down a peg and look good before his semi-girlfriend at the same time. "Don't worry Goku, I got this." Swish. Krillin vanished from his position and appeared in the middle of the stage. This made everyone look serious instantly. The speed at which Krillin just moved, it was comparable to Piccolo's, but Cell disregarded it. It didn't matter to him if or not Krillin had become powerful, he was still stronger. "Is it you this time, Krillin? Go, play with him for a while, let's see what he came up with," Cell told another Cell Jr., who giggled and jumped onto the stage. "Alright Cell, this one's for Vegeta." With a swish, Krillin vanished and appeared before the Cell Jr., smiling at the shocked face of his opponent. Krillin kicked his chin with full force. Crack. Which launched the Cell Jr. into the air and cracked his chin along the way. "Take this." Charging up a scatter Kamehameha, Krillin fired it into the sky. Whoosh. And just like intended, the Kamehameha scattered into multiple miniature Kamehamehas and attacked the Cell Jr. from all directions. Boom. Even when the blast obscured the vision, Krillin didn't stop and chased into the smoke screen. Bang. Boom. Bang. Constant fist-to-fist sonic booms were occurring in the skies, and the Z-fighters were shocked at the spectacle. Incredible. Tien praised. He couldn't even sense Krillin right now, but he knew Krillin had far outclassed him, because he not only cannot sense him, he cannot even follow the fight. Which means Krillin can speed blitz him and he won't even know. Wow, Krillin's become so strong. Yamcha exclaimed. Chitsu and Gohan also looked on with amazement. But it was Piccolo, Goku, and Nappa who smelled something off. "Huh, why can't I sense him?" Goku rubbed his head while making a confused face, and Piccolo straight up narrowed his eyes. "He gives me a feeling similar to number 18. As if a part of the discussion, Cell spoke out, in semi-amazement and semi-irritation. You are an android too." Cell confirmed Krillin's situation, and this once again raised the shock value amongst the Z-fighters. "No way, Krillin was a robot this whole time," Chitsu exclaimed, as if making a massive discovery, which caused everyone to sweat drop, and Krillin to almost stagger mid-air. "Hey, I am a human, not a robot dash." Bang. Ouch. Hey, that hurt. Krillin countered the Cell Jr., who took this time to punch him in the face, and again started a hearty battle. He had been slapped around since the day Raditz arrived on Earth. Now he was finally back in the game again, and he had infinite energy to boot. He was learning more about his new body in this battle as well, and he was liking every second of it. Becoming an android has completely brought out the potential he normally cannot use as a human. Then he isn't a robot? Chitsu asked while scratching his head, but this time around Raditz was the one who replied. "Krillin is a human, Chitsu. He has been transformed into an android by Bulma 2 days ago." Krillin felt he was getting left behind, so he decided to become an artificial human, and look at that, it paid off. Hearing this, every Z-fighter had a solemn expression on their face. They respected Krillin for this. Not everyone had the courage to forego their bodies they worked so hard for to plunge into the unknown, just for a shot at greater strength. Yamcha knew he couldn't take the risk. He didn't have the guts to change his body permanently, and looking at the rest of the Z-fighters, they understood the sentiment as well. But this didn't discourage them, it only showed them that there are other ways to get stronger. Krillin has found his way, they just had to find theirs. But this semi-bubbling atmosphere was broken by a low voice, a voice from their strongest fighter, Raditz. "Listen, in a few moments, get ready to attack Cell." Piccolo looked at Raditz with narrowed eyes and asked in a low voice too. "Are you sure? Your family is in West City right now." The Z-fighters also looked at Raditz. They didn't want to do something drastic which can cause Cell to explode West City. But Raditz himself looked certain. He slowly but surely said, in a determined voice, We cannot go on like this, trust me, attack him, West City will be fine. Gaku blinked, then looked at Raditz for a final confirmation, which Raditz gave with a light nod. This made him smile with confidence. Now that his brother was taking charge for West City, he can go all out against Cell. Now all they had to do was look for a chance. As soon as Cell let his guard down, they will strike. Let's see what he can do without the threat of an explosion hanging on their heads. Chapter 120 Raditz vs Cell. Cell was merrily watching Krillin battle against his Cell Jr. Even if Krillin turning into an android was an unexpected surprise, it wasn't something he particularly cared about. After all, why would he? He was the perfect being. This confidence of his was why the following events took him by surprise. Bang! A solid hit to the cheek and the feeling of blood in his mouth. This was the entirety of Cell's current feelings. Boom! Crashing into the mountains, Cell's body ragdolled and broke each peak one by one, before finally coming to a stop in an embarrassed way. Clench. Cell clenched his teeth while wiping his lips. There was blood on it. His bloody fingers were starting back at him as he looked at it while panting. He was hit. How dare they? You, Raditz. Growling in a ferocious way, Cell glared at the yellow-eyed Raditz, the one who had hit him on the cheek by surprise. Spit. Spitting out purple blood, Cell got up from the ground. He could see it now. It wasn't only Raditz. Behind him stood the rest of them. So they decided to let West City perish. Is that it? With a twisted face, Cell angrily glared at Raditz, before spitting venomously. You will regret it, Raditz. Raditz, not the least bit intimidated, smirked before saying lightly. Cell, I am the Sun King. Cell was incensed. Sun King ha. So Raditz wanted to tell him he didn't take orders from anyone. Is that it? Fine, he will tell the arrogant bastard why he should have kept himself in check. Snap. Snapping his fingers, Cell signaled the beginning of West City's destruction. Dr. Gero was hiding in there and taking care of setting up the explosive, and this was a particularly powerful one, as it was the same explosive installed into 16. After all, this explosive was 16 himself, who was deactivated by Gero and used as a walking nuke. Smirk. But soon Cell's confidence waned. He didn't like that smirk pasted on Raditz's face. Surely he must know this was a signal for the explosion to go off, but why? Why is it that he stands mockingly? And why can't he hear the blast go off? Could it be? Cell stepped back in horror. The backup plan, it was foiled. How did you do it? All of you are here. There's nobody left to save West City. Cell had used his mind and trapped everyone here, so his plan can go smoothly, but somehow Raditz managed to foil his efforts, without even moving. Cell didn't understand. This shouldn't have been possible. Watching his disbelief, Raditz shook his head with no intention of explaining, but a smile did come upon his face. This was a happy smile with an undertone of relief. She did it. Good job, 18. Lazuli, now 18, was Raditz's backup plan. The main reason he didn't take this beast of an ally with him was because her job was to protect his family. Raditz didn't actually know Cell would rig the entirety of West City, but he still wanted to keep a hand for his family, just in case. And that caution paid off. 18 managed to dismantle Gero's schemes after all. No doubt, Bulma had helped, or an ordinary girl like 18 won't know the first thing about dismantling explosives. Raditz heaved an internal sigh of relief after this, then folded his hands and looked at Cell with the look of a superior. I warned you, Cell, you shouldn't have threatened the Sun King. Now then, it's time for your punishment. Giving a ferocious grin, Raditz's hair turned white and his eyes turned gray. He loosened his body and looked at the wide-eyed Cell. Let's see, for your punishment. How about death? Flash. Instantly flashing before Cell, Raditz gave a straight uppercut, which threw Cell into the air, his body uncontrollably rushing towards the outer space with breakneck speeds. Boom. A delayed sonic boom occurred after Raditz's attack. He was so fast even sound was unable to keep up with Raditz's casual speed. Not giving anyone a chance to say anything, Raditz flashed away, his destination being the out-of-control Cell. Watching the two most powerful fighters duke it out away from their sight, the Z fighters decided to pay attention to the battle via sensing, but most of their attention was still focused on another thing. He. The Cell Juniors left alive had begun to gather together, laughing in an eerie fashion. Goku, we have a problem. Piccolo said while eyeing the Cell Juniors. Even the one fighting Krillin had gathered with the rest, leaving Krillin to twitch his lips before he too gathered with the remaining Z fighters. No way, what if the Cell Juniors gather together and attack him all at once? He would be toast. Goku, do we need to help Raditz? Piccolo asked. Watching the increasingly dire situation, he wanted to know if Raditz was going to be able to handle Cell alone before any one of them can think of further plans. Goku was serious right now too. Knowing the weight of the situation, he calmly looked at the place Raditz and Cell were fighting in, then after a few more seconds, he smiled. He can do it. When he transformed just now, he was already stronger than Cell. I just don't know if he can maintain that state. Goku mumbled the last part. He, being the battlefield genius, had already sensed that Raditz was in a hurry. His brother doesn't do stuff like that normally, so Raditz definitely wanted to end this fight as soon as possible. If this new white-haired form, which Goku figured was a legendary Super Sun thing, was something Raditz had mastered, he wouldn't be in such a hurry. So Raditz might lose. Piccolo asked once more, this time urgently, because the Cell Juniors had already gathered together and were circling around them, as if wolves waiting to pounce. He will be fine, I think. Goku again gave an unsure yet doable reply, but now Piccolo had to believe it and go for it. They didn't have any other choice. The rest of the Z fighters understood this too, so no further discussions were held. Everyone here was a warrior, they knew what to do from the get-go. Crackle. Goku took the lead, and turned Super Saiyan 2 instantly. That's right, Goku had achieved it this time around. Crackle. And so did Gohan, who followed into his father's footsteps and transformed as well, with both of them taking the lead. The rest followed. Nappa powered into ultimate, Piccolo cracked his neck, Krillin took his stance, Tien, Yamcha and Tetsuo faintly grouped together. 2 Cell Juniors were dead, so 2 extra Z fighters would have remained free if it was one-on-one, but the humans knew they weren't a match for Cell Juniors like that. Although this was not very fair, they had to think about this logically, so the 3 humans, Yamcha, Tien, and Tetsuo decided to fight against 1 Cell Junior together. This would mean there is no one left to support Raditz immediately, but they simply weren't capable to moving away right now. Cell was definitely a smart one, the Cell Juniors were most certainly commanded by him to act like this. Even when taken by surprise, Cell had enough time to think of a strategy against Raditz. He was most definitely a fearsome foe, they only hoped Raditz can finish the job before his time runs out.